Chapter 24. Gu Nan, are you serious? Zhang Dongxing looked at Gu Nan, who was standing in front of him, helplessly. Yes, I've completed 5 missions. According to the rules, I can leave the Ming Lu now. Gu Nan's expression was calm as he spoke in a flat tone. It had been more than a month since the last private mission. The new missions from Ming Lu's headquarters had already been issued. Gu Nan randomly picked a few small missions. Due to the time flow, only 2 to 3 days had passed in the astral world after he completed them. Although they were small missions, the rewards were not small. Gu Nan now had 950 points, close to 1,000. His sin points had reached 44 points. He only needed 1 more point to unlock the 3rd equipment slot. Zhang Dongxing was helpless. It was understandable that Gu Nan wanted to leave. In fact, there was no one in this branch who didn't want to leave. Even if they wanted to stay in Ming Lu, they could go to a bigger branch. Why suffer here? Not to mention that Gu Nan and Qin Xuanji were kidnapped. It was normal for them to want to leave. But what Zhang Dongxing didn't understand was that the 2 of them had completed 5 missions. Among the 10 people in this branch, the longest had been trapped for 2 years because they couldn't complete 1 round. From the Sky Blue City mission, it was clear that it was not that easy to complete. But in the hands of this young man, everything was different. Completing the mission was as easy as eating and drinking, and he could even drag Qin Xuanji along, bringing her along to meet the quota. I understand, but can you wait for a while? The immortal demon world needs your help, Zhang Dongxing said after thinking for a moment. It had already been half a year in the immortal devil world. The righteous and corrupt paths had already started fighting, and it had already reached the climax. Gu Nan, who was one of the strongest below transcendence, was extremely important. Because of this, Tang Xian had no time to come here. Gu Nan shook his head firmly. I have to go back to the Red Carp first. If there is a chance, I will go to the immortal demon world. Zhang Dongxing was disappointed at first, but after hearing Gu Nan's words, he could only nod. This was probably the best outcome. Okay, I'll help you with the paperwork. Do you want to wait for Qin Xuanji? She has also applied to leave the organization. No need, I'm not familiar with her. We have arrived at the station of the 6th asteroid belt. The transport ship will only stay here for 3 minutes. Passengers, please do not disembark. As the electronic female voice rang out, Gu Nan stepped into the transport ship's 3rd cabin. Sir, please show me your identification. The stewardess of the 3rd cabin stood by the door. When she saw Gu Nan coming up, she was obviously stunned for a moment and then quickly said. She had been working on the transport ship for a few months, but she had never seen anyone disembark from the 6th planet. This was the first time. After a while, she handed the identification back to Gu Nan and could not help but look at him a few more times. All of Gu Nan's identification information was naturally prepared by Ming Lu, but the information was inevitably a bit random. For example, in the column of his birthplace, it was written as the 6th asteroid belt. Someone was actually born in such a damn place. The stewardess' worldview collapsed. The next station was the Red Carp, the terminal station. The cabin was a bit deserted, with only a few passengers sitting. Gu Nan was glad to have some peace and quiet. He found a seat in the inner area and sat down. Sister, what is the 6th asteroid belt? I don't know, it seems to be an interstellar observation point. Someone actually came up from there. Could it be a bad guy? Do bad guys dare to board a federal transport ship? Don't dream all day long. A faint conversation could be faintly heard. Gu Nan did not even need to look up to know that it was a pair of sisters talking behind him, and the subject of their conversation was naturally himself. Although the 2 tried their best to lower their voices, it was still a bit difficult to hide it from Gu Nan's ears. 2 unrelated passers-by were just curious, and Gu Nan was not interested in eavesdropping anymore. He was about to ignore the 2, but his attention was attracted by their next sentence. Sister, this time Sister Gunyan invited us to Red Carp. What is it for? It doesn't matter if I tell you now. She has a friend who has some problems with her cultivation of the mind, and is about to go crazy. Hey, who is it? Do we know each other? For some reason, the younger sister's voice suddenly became excited. Sister, let me do it this time, okay? Absolutely not. The target this time is an ascender, and his mind is quite complicated. You can't handle it. The conversation between the two ended here, and Gu Nan, who was sitting quietly in front, raised his eyebrows slightly. Gu Nian's friend and an ascender. Could it be the little white loli? Gu Nan was not surprised to meet the two sisters unexpectedly, because at this time, this was the only transport ship heading to Red Carp. But in this way, it would be easier to find Gu Nian, and he could just follow the two sisters. The 6th asteroid belt was not far from Red Carp, and the transport ship soon arrived. Gu Nan also left with the crowd. Only then did he see the appearance of the two sisters clearly. The elder sister was a typical Oriental beauty, with black hair, black eyes, and fair skin. The younger sister looked younger and more lively, and was mixed race, with a pale gold color in her hair. There were already people here to meet the two sisters, and Gu Nan stood nearby and heard the conversation clearly. Miss Lu, Miss is already waiting for you, please follow me. A man in a black suit stood in front of the two women, looking respectful. Gu Nian is here too? The elder sister, who was called Miss Lu, was a little surprised. She thought that Gu Nian would be waiting for them at home. After all, with her identity, it was inevitable that she would be a little sensitive to appear here to meet someone. If they were seen by others, it might cause a big uproar the next day. The two followed the man out of the transport ship station, and after a few turns, they came to a very remote hut. A delicate and pretty girl was already waiting at the door. However, it was not Gu Nian. Gu Xingzhu? Where is Gu Nian? Miss Lu frowned slightly, feeling that she seemed to be involved in trouble. This Gu Xingzhu in front of her was also a member of Care for One's family, but she did not get along well with Gu Nian. Gu Xingzhu looked less than 20 years old, but she behaved very maturely, with a confident smile on her face. Miss Lu Xinyu, don't be nervous. Something happened at home, and this time, Big Sister and I are on the same side. How can I trust you? Lu Xinyu was indeed not nervous. She was only here to help, and even if she could not help, she could not help. We can talk about this later, let's take a look at the patient first. Gu Xingzhu looked a little helpless. If you came a little later, she might not be able to make it in time. As she spoke, Gu Xingzhu opened the door of the hut, revealing a girl curled up in a ball with a dull expression. Chapter 25. Mr. Gu Nan, according to what you said, you and Bai Luoluo didn't know each other before this? Gu Xingzhu sat in the hall and looked at the young man who was drinking tea with rock candy in front of him with a dark expression. The tea that Care for One's family served to their customers was priceless. This person actually added sugar? Gu Nan didn't care what she thought. As far as he was concerned, he preferred sweet drinks like tofu pudding. Yes, I don't know that little girl. Gu Nan nodded without hesitation. I bumped into her on the side of the road. She seemed to be lost, so I sent her back. Would Bai Luoluo talk to a stranger in this state? Who are you trying to fool? Gu Xingzhu didn't believe a word of Gu Nan's words. However, since he was pushing the blame away, she couldn't find fault with him. After all, he was the one who sent her back. Then, Mr. Gu Nan. Oh, don't mention it. Just call me Red Scarf. I'm not thanking you. Half an hour later, Gu Xingzhu threw her cup angrily and went straight to the back hall. She only said, when Big Sister comes back, let her talk to this person herself. Gu Nan shrugged as he watched her walk away. Mr. Gu Nan, have we met before? Lu Xinyu, who was sitting beside them, suddenly asked Gu Nan after Gu Xingzhu left. Yes, on the transport ship. Gu Nan admitted readily. Land Marigold slapped her thigh. So it's you. You? Were you following us? Land Marigold wasn't dumb. She thought of this possibility immediately and blurted it out. Lu Sinyu's expression changed slightly, but she didn't stop her from speaking. She could only smile helplessly. Her sister was too straightforward. Even if she guessed it, she couldn't say it out loud. You guys found out. Lu Sinyu, how can you do this? How about it? Hit me if you don't like it? The Lu sisters. After another half an hour, Lu Sinyu, who claimed to be a negotiation expert, realized that she couldn't do anything to this young man. He wasn't going to reason with her, and he wouldn't do anything to her in care for one's family. After the two groups of people failed to communicate, Gu Nan was first brought to a room by the butler to rest. No one came to disturb him, so Gu Nan was happy to have some peace and quiet. Until the evening, Gu Nan was still reading some books in his room with great interest. A gust of wind brushed past his back. Transcendent? Gu Nan looked at Gu Lu, Gu Nan to Gu Gu to Gu to Gu. Lu Gu, transcendent. Gu Nan looked at Gu Nian, who was standing in front of him, and his voice was filled with surprise. This was the first time he saw Gu Nian's true self. She didn't look much different from her in the Langyu world, whether it was her appearance or temperament, but her expression was colder. Gu Nan was not surprised by her appearance, but in just a few months, Gu Nian had actually become a transcendent. This was out of his expectations. Had she reached this step a long time ago, or was it because of the gains from that reincarnation that she had stepped into the realm of transcendence? Gu Nan believed that it was the latter. You actually obtained a divine ability treasure? Looks like you've had a lot of fortuitous encounters in the past few months. Gu Nian looked at the bewitching earrings on Gu Nan's ears and couldn't help but exclaim. In terms of surprise, Gu Nian was even more surprised. Gu Nan was just an ascender from a small plane. Yet, in such a short time, he had actually obtained such a treasure. And looking at his proficiency, it was obvious that he had a deep understanding of this divine ability. Gu Nian was more willing to believe that this was a treasure related to his inheritance. The two of them were like good friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. They sat on opposite sides of the tea table and chatted about what had happened during this period of time. So it's Ming Lu. No wonder my people couldn't find you no matter what. When Gu Nian heard that he had been kidnapped to Ming Lu, he came to a sudden realization. I didn't expect you to also walk the path of reincarnation. Isn't reincarnation good? Gu Nan was slightly surprised. In his opinion, reincarnation was basically a profitable business. Gu Nian shook his head lightly and didn't explain further. He changed the topic and said, So, you came to me to find an identity to use as a cover and become a solitary reincarnator? That's right. Gu Nan admitted readily. There was nothing to hide about this. He chose to reveal the information about Ming Lu because he needed Gu Nian's help. Of course, he naturally didn't say anything about Qin Xuanji, deities, and himself. Gu Nian thought for a while and suddenly smiled. I can provide you with the materials for reincarnation, but in exchange, hey, don't you still owe me karma? Hearing that Gu Nian still had conditions, Gu Nan hurriedly interrupted her. He now knew what karma was. Obviously, Gu Nian's karma was to take care of his family in the Langyu world. Gu Nan was also one of them. Except for those who were looking for trouble, she probably had settled the others. Only Gu Nan was an anomaly. She couldn't settle him with common sense, so she had to bring him to the astral world. Bringing you to the astral world is the biggest help I can give you, isn't it? Gu Nian smiled. With your fate so far, the worlds won't fall on me. Gu Nan couldn't help but be silent. He knew that he couldn't fool the old fox Gu Nian, so he had to say, What are your conditions? I have to deal with something right now. You don't need to worry about care for one's family. You will be helping yourself by helping her. Gu Nian looked serious. She comes from the same place as you. Helping her is also helping yourself. Gu Nan thought of the fact that the crime had not been completed yet, so he immediately nodded. Deal. That night, Gu Nan moved out of care for one's family and came to the single room that Gu Nian provided for him. He was going to carry out the reincarnation ceremony here. Of course, he couldn't live in care for one's family. I can't rush by Loli's matter. This should be a long-term event. I don't know how to complete the darkening. Gu Nan was thinking while preparing for reincarnation. Darkening was a very complicated process. It was not something that could be done in a day. Oh, maybe it could be done in one day. Putting this aside, Gu Nan now wanted to go back to the immortal and demon world, to have a look. Of course, it was not because there was another little Loli there, but because of the main mission. Ming Lu had already taken action. If everything went well, he might be able to get in and help to complete the main mission. Although there would be a lot of team punishment and the final reward might be pitiful, it would not be too low. This was at least a medium-sized dimension. In the small dark room, Gu Nan meticulously carved runes on the ground according to the method provided by Qin Xuanji. Chapter 26. In a remote graveyard in the world of immortals and demons, two young men, one tall and one short, were looking around, looking for something. Brother Su, why do I feel so cold? Let's go, the tall man said as he walked behind them. Go for what? In this world, the bold are full, and the cowardly are starved. Brother Su was small, but he was bold. He scolded, besides, isn't it half the day? What are you afraid of? These two cowardly grave robbers didn't dare to come in the middle of the night, so they chose to come at noon. This one. It looks like rich people. The two of them were amateurs. After looking for a long time, they still couldn't decide which grave to rob. It was Brother Su who pointed it out casually. The tall and thin man gulped. Under Brother Su's scolding, he finally began to dig with trembling hands. As he dug, he muttered, "May the ancestors protect us, may the ancestors protect us. It's not that we want to do this, it's just that the world doesn't let us live." After a while, the two of them indeed dug out a coffin. Brother Su's eyes began to shine. This coffin is really beautiful. Quick, open the coffin. There must be treasures inside. Brother Su, what are you doing? Brother Su was still looking for tools. When he heard the tall and thin man's voice, he turned around and was almost scared out of his wits. He saw that the coffin had actually opened a crack, and a figure stood up from inside. The two of them screamed in unison, and quickly turned around and ran away. However, a shadow suddenly appeared and circled around their chests. In an instant their lives were cut off. The person who walked out of the coffin was naturally Gu Nan. After having the shadow earring for so long, his control over the power of shadow was becoming more and more proficient. Two little thieves actually dug it out. Looks like I'll have to find a safer place next time. Gu Nan looked at the graveyard behind him and shook his head lightly. After a reincarnator left the reincarnation plane, the body they possessed had to be preserved properly. In fact, they usually found a place to hide it. In just half a year, the surrounding environment had changed greatly. It was a desolate scene. Gu Nan frowned slightly. Following the route in his memory, he walked toward a nearby town. 2 hours later, Gu Nan stood in front of a small pawnshop and rubbed his forehead helplessly. This city had also been affected by the flames of war. Now it was already a dead city with few people, and this small stronghold of the Ming Lu faction was now empty. They didn't even leave any information or resources behind. It seems like they retreated calmly. Gu Nan walked out of the pawnshop, but he didn't find any more valuable clues. He couldn't even find the people from Ming Lu, which made him a little angry. Right at this moment, the sound of a conversation came from afar and attracted his attention. "Fairy Lin, this is Qinyan Town," a young man's voice said. "Wherever the 7 slaughtering demoness goes, not even a blade of grass grows. She really is a demoness." The other man sneered and said, "Zhang Tianshu, that demoness is chasing after the people of the 6 evil sects. She should be on the side of your righteous path. Silence, silence, don't slander me. Okay, both of you are here to catch the demoness. Why do you have to fight with words? A soft female voice sounding a little helpless. Gu Nan turned his head and looked. 3 figures had gradually walked closer. It was easy to distinguish them. A woman wearing a pink gauze dress with an extraordinary temperament should be Fairy Lin. Next to her was a young man wearing a 7-star Taoist robe, with a dignified appearance, should be Zhang Tianshu. The last one was a man with a disdainful face, dressed like a Jianghu wastrel, should be Silence. The 3 of them were a little surprised to see Gu Nan here, because Gu Nan's clothes didn't look like a refugee in the chaos of war. Greetings, young master. Fairy Lin stepped forward and bowed slightly. I wonder if young master has seen a woman in black? Woman in black? The 7 slaughtering demoness you were talking about? Gu Nan's face showed curiosity. That's right. That 7 slaughtering demoness is the reincarnation of the 7 slaughtering star. Her killing nature is extremely heavy. If young master can find her traces, it would be a blessing for the world. Fairy Lin said with a serious expression. Gu Nan shook his head. I just got here. Fairy Lin's face showed a trace of disappointment, but she still smiled and thanked Gu Nan. Her words were like a spring breeze, and it was obvious that she came from a famous sect. At this moment, Silence's expression suddenly changed. He saw a seagull slowly descending from the sky, spitting a letter into his hand. Silence quickly read it, and his face immediately showed joy. Fairy Lin, I found it. I found the demoness whereabouts. Really? That's great. Fairy Lin was indescribably happy, but Zhang Tianshu's expression became gloomy. Silence glanced at Zhang Tianshu and handed the letter in his hand to Fairy Lin. This is news from my family. The 7 slaughtering demoness is in the Luo River Valley area, and she has already been trapped by the people of the evil path. Zhang Tianshu hurriedly said, Then we have to hurry over. The people of the evil path hate that demoness to the bone. Once a transcendent martial scholar arrives, they will definitely kill her. Fairy Lin also nodded, and her face showed a compassionate expression. The 7 slaughtering demoness is the enemy of the evil path. If we can resolve her killing nature, it might be a blessing for the righteous path. Fairy Lin is merciful. Zhang and Silence sighed. On the side, Gu Nan secretly rolled his eyes. In his heart, he had already labeled this Fairy Lin as a saintess bitch, but he said, The 7 slaughtering demoness sounds so powerful, why don't you let me help as well? The 3 of them were stunned. The 2 young men looked at Gu Nan with disdain, and Fairy Lin also revealed a bitter smile. Young master's good intentions, Lin Jun understands. It's just that the demoness is very powerful, if young master. Bang! Gu Nan suddenly stretched out his left hand, and punched the wall beside him. A muffled sound rang out, and at the same time, he interrupted Lin Jun's words. His punch landed, but the wall did not react at all. The 3 of them were very confused. The next moment, a crack began to appear on the wall. Zhang Tianshu rolled his eyes. After a while, the crack slightly widened. Silence frowned, and began to feel a little impatient. After a breath's time, Gu Nan retracted his hand and patted the dust off it. Lin Jun was about to speak, but he put a finger in front of his mouth, and then pointed at the pawnshop. I say. Zhang Tianshu raised his head, but halfway through his words, he was suddenly pulled by Silence. Kacha. Zhang Tianshu couldn't help but turn his head to look, and saw that the crack was widening at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the entire pawnshop had completely collapsed. This. Chapter 27. In the end, Gu Nan did not manage to enter. It was not because anyone could stop him, but because Lin Jun persuaded them to stay. The fairy sect has a secret technique that can dispel the killing intent in Miss Yan's heart. Please wait here for a moment, Lin Jun said before she drifted away. Gu Nan touched his nose and did not force her. According to Ming Lu's information, the fairy sect was the most mysterious among the 5 righteous sects. Their heritage might even come from ancient times, and many people in Ming Lu were interested in it. Many of the fairy sect's techniques were of high grade and involved the mind. Hence, Gu Nan was also interested in Lin Jun's secret technique. He did not mind taking a look at it. On the other hand, Mo Wuji and Zhang Tianshu looked at Gu Nan with unfriendly eyes. In their eyes, their previous hesitation had caused them to miss a great opportunity. If they had known that Lin Jun had a secret technique, they would not have hesitated and let this barbarian steal the limelight for no reason. The cave that Yen Xiaoxiao was in was very quiet. Lin Jun had been in there for about half an hour, but there was no movement. This made the people outside the cave anxious. They were worried that something might happen to Lin Jun, but they were also worried that the heretic cultivators might attack at any time. One had to know that the Mo family had blocked countless heretic cultivators by themselves, and the situation was not optimistic at all. In this short period of time, people had come to report several times, hoping that Mo Wuyao would retreat as soon as possible. "Young master, if we don't retreat now, we'll really be in danger." An old man in plain clothes was trying to persuade Mo Wuyao. "Uncle Fu, I know it's dangerous now, but—" Mo Wuyao's face was bitter and he was still hesitating. "The Luo River Valley is remote, and a transcendent grandmaster shouldn't be able to get here so quickly." Just as he was hesitating, a burst of laughter came from afar. "Ha ha ha ha! It's really effortless to catch the 7 slaughtering demoness, but I actually met the 7-star sword Zhang Tianshu." As the laughter got closer, everyone could see the appearance of the newcomer. It was a young man with black hair and purple eyes. He was clad in pitch-black armor, and had a pair of metal gauntlets on his hands. There was also a ferocious black helmet on his head. "Du Mian!" Zhang Tianshu blurted out as soon as he saw him. Mo's soundless expression slightly changed. "This is the Little Devil Monarch Du Mian?" Du Mian was known as the Little Devil Monarch in the demonic path. He was the undisputed number 1 of the younger generation, and was only a step away from becoming a transcendent grandmaster. Thinking of this, Mo Soundless couldn't help but helplessly look at his big brother. Indeed, the transcendent martial scholar didn't come, but the number 1 young expert of the demonic path. Du Mian scanned the few of them, but he did not see the 7 slaughtered demoness. He also knew the Mo brothers. As for Gu Nan, he was completely ignored. The 7 slaughtering demoness was going to be killed. As the second disciple of the heaven-seeking sect, Zhang Tianshu naturally had to be killed as well. Du Mian's gaze focused, and his figure directly appeared in front of Zhang Tianshu at an unbelievable speed before fiercely smashing his fist towards the latter's face. 9-fold devil art. Zhang Tianshu didn't even have time to react. This was the only thought that popped up in his mind before he was sent flying. Seeing this scene, the Mo brothers were also dumbfounded. They knew that Du Mian would be very strong, but they didn't expect him to be this strong. "It's actually the 9th fold of the devil art." The 2 brothers looked at each other and saw the bitterness in each other's eyes. The techniques passed down by the demon monarchs had no other name but the devil art. Other than the first demon monarch, who was a genius who could push the devil art to the 10th fold, the strongest demon monarchs in the past were only at the peak of the 9th fold. Du Mian's devil art had already entered the 9th fold, and was not much weaker than the current demon monarch. The only difference was the realm. Gu Nan looked at Du Mian in surprise. He had transmigrated for so long, but this was the first time he saw a cultivator who had strengthened his physical body, so he took a few more glances. Different from Qin Xuanji, who was a half-finished product, Du Mian's aura was already at the peak of the innate realm. Although his speed was still a distance away from his own, his strength was very close. If he didn't activate the Dragon Heart Pendant and only relied on his physical strength, Gu Nan reckoned that it would take him more than 100 moves to finish him off. Du Mian looked at Zhang Tianshu flying away and sneered. He didn't look at him anymore, and Zhang Tianshu naturally had his subordinates to deal with him. He turned to look at the Mo brothers. Now that the world is in chaos, I won't take your lives for Elder Mo's sake. Where is the 7 slaughtering demoness? Mo Wuya's face tightened. Of course, he couldn't tell them the whereabouts of Yan Xiaoxiao. On the other hand, Mo's soundless eyes flickered. He wasn't familiar with Yan Xiaoxiao, and he only wanted to please Lin Jun. Now that Du Mian was here, even Lin Jun was in danger in that cave. A voice came from the side. Mo Soundless was originally hesitating, but he was stunned when he heard this voice. Mo Wuya had already turned his head and looked at the owner of the voice, his eyes filled with anger. Du Mian also looked at Gu Nan in shock and then laughed. Good. Little brother, remember to come to my limitless demon sect in the future. I'll give you the title of branch leader for fun. Gu Nan nodded seriously. If there's a chance, I'll go. His words weren't taken to heart by Du Mian. The latter turned around and went into the cave. Seeing Du Mian's figure disappear, Gu Nan revealed a smile and started to walk towards the cave. Those who had designs on Yan Xiaoxiao had already gone in, so he naturally had to go in and join in the fun. However, just as he took a step, he was stopped by Mo Wuya. What are you doing? Gu Nan looked at him suspiciously. You still dare to ask me what I'm doing? Mo Wuya said word by word. You despicable person, you actually dared to sell Xiao Xiao's position. Gu Nan punched Mo Wuya's abdomen, and the monstrous force caused him to bend over. He was in so much pain that he couldn't say a word. Retard. People want to kill your Xiao Xiao, but you don't dare to say anything, so now you're asking me? Gu Nan squatted down and patted his cheek. Do you think I'm easy to bully? After saying this, Gu Nan didn't give him a chance to answer, and quickly stepped into the cave. Mo Soundless and Uncle Fu, who were behind him, finally reacted. They hurriedly rushed forward and supported Mo Wuya, who was lying on the ground. Big brother! Young master! I'm fine. Mo Wuya clutched his stomach and retched for a long time before he opened his mouth with a pale face. Second brother, who is this person? Mo Wuya's expression was a little strange. I'm not sure either. We met him nearby, and we only know that he's called Gu Nan. He's very strong. Chapter 28. The cave was rather dark and there was only a faint light. However, this did not affect Gu Nan's advance. With the heretic god's body, night vision was a basic ability. However, the complicated route here gave him a headache. There were so many forks that it was almost impossible to conduct a carpet search. This was probably the key reason why Yan Xiaoxiao could hide here and avoid the evil path's pursuit. Fortunately, Gu Nan had let a few enemies in. Soon, energy waves came from ahead, like a beacon in the darkness, guiding Gu Nan forward. In the depths of the cave, Lin Jun was sitting cross-legged on the ground. Her body shone with a white light that slowly extended outwards. Du Mian stood at the edge of the white light and smiled coldly. Fairy Lin, stop struggling. How long can your secret technique last? Time is on my side. Since ancient times, evil has never triumphed over good. Lin Jun can only try her best. Lin Jun's expression did not change. However, when she looked to the side, she could not hide the worry in her eyes. At that moment, Yan Xiaoxiao's eyes were closed. She lay beside Lin Jun, her fingers still slightly twitching. Du Mian noticed her gaze and his smile widened. This is the 7 slaughter demoness, right? You have to block me while using the Great Mercy Universal Prayer technique to block her killing intent. I'm afraid it won't be long before you die. This time, Lin Jun did not reply. She only maintained a cold expression. In fact, Du Mian was right. If not for the fact that he had to bring Yan Xiaoxiao away, she would not have been unable to escape from Du Mian. Just as the two of them were in a stalemate, footsteps came from the side. Right now, only the few outside would enter the cave. Hope flashed in Lin Jun's eyes. Du Mian frowned slightly. Since you are courting death, Even if you are from the Mo family, don't blame me. However, when the person appeared, the two of them were stunned. It's you. Du Mian raised his eyebrows. Just as he was about to threaten him, Lin Jun spoke. Young Master Gu, you came at the right time. Come in quickly. Lin Jun took a deep breath. This person is the current demon heir. He is extremely dangerous. Please take care of this lady. Lin Jun's voice was filled with determination. It was as if she wanted to fight it out with Du Mian. In fact, this was not impossible. As long as Gu Nan entered the range of the white light and helped her keep an eye on Yan Xiaoxiao, she would be free to deal with Du Mian. As one of the three great fairies, there was no way she didn't have any hidden tricks up her sleeve. Before Gu Nan could speak, Du Mian sneered. Too late. Almost at the same time, his fist had already swung in front of Gu Nan. As long as he got rid of the variable Gu Nan, he, Du Mian, would still have the upper hand. In the face of this punch, Gu Nan did not dodge. He only glanced at him indifferently as if he did not see it. You can't even react? Du Mian sneered in his heart, and a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. However, he did not notice that the pendant in front of Gu Nan's chest shone slightly. Just as his fist was about to fall, Gu Nan suddenly raised his hand and punched him hard in the face. The power of a dragon! His strength, which was not inferior to Du Mian's, was instantly enhanced by several times, and his strength and speed reached an unbelievable level. Du Mian came fast, and left even faster, flying backward at a speed several times faster. Be careful, Lin Jun's voice came late, and before she could finish, her words were all stuck in her throat. But Gu Nan ignored her. While the power of the dragon had not disappeared, he rushed straight into the white light, grabbed the stunned Du Mian, and punched him repeatedly. Bam! 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 The punches fell like raindrops, and there was a dull sound. The physique of the little devil monarch was indeed strong. 5 seconds passed quickly. Gu Nan's 5-second man status disappeared, and he stopped attacking. Du Mian had been beaten to the point that he didn't look like a human anymore. His face was almost unrecognizable. Lin Jun was completely stunned. She knew that Gu Nan was strong, but this was Du Mian. Strictly speaking, she and Du Mian were of the same generation. If she did not inherit the identity of one of the 3 heavenly daughters, she would even be weaker than the little devil monarch. But now, Du Mian was actually being beaten up by this barbarian. Young Master Gu? More importantly, how could he attack in the great merciful universal wish spell? Lin Jun felt as if her brain had turned into mush. She couldn't understand every single thing that Gu Nan did. After Gu Nan beat up Du Mian, he threw him aside and began to walk towards Lin Jun. More accurately, he was walking towards Yan Xiaoxiao. Of course, he felt that when he entered the range of the white light, there was a force that began to invade his soul. But before this force could reach the depths of his soul, it was quickly consumed in his sea of consciousness until it completely disappeared. The body of the demon god had many abilities, such as super recovery, dark vision, immunity to normal poisons, spiritual will, and so on. Normal spiritual spells were completely useless against Gu Nan. Gu Nan walked to Yan Xiaoxiao's side and reached out his hand to pat the latter's pretty face. Gu, young Master Gu, what are you doing? Lin Jun felt that she was going crazy. She had spent so much effort to make Yan Xiaoxiao fall into a light sleep, but this Gu Nan actually wanted to wake her up. Didn't he know that once the 7 slaughtered demoness wakes up? No, he could even deal with Du Mian easily, so the 7 slaughtered demoness was nothing in front of absolute power, demoness or not, it was not important at all. Yan Xiaoxiao was indeed forcefully hypnotized. Under the external force, she quickly opened her eyes. Her movements were even faster than when she opened her eyes. Almost at the same time, her right hand had already pulled out a dagger from her waist and quickly slashed Gu Nan's throat. At the same time, her left hand clenched into a fist and punched Gu Nan's chin from below. If nothing went wrong, Gu Nan would be the first to be hit, and then his throat would be slit. However, Gu Nan's movements were even faster. He only lowered his head slightly, and Yan Xiaoxiao's punch directly missed. His left hand moved slightly, and from a strange angle, he actually grabbed the young girl's wrist. Everything happened extremely quickly, almost in the blink of an eye. In the eyes of a bystander like Lin Jun, it was as if Yan Xiaoxiao's punch had missed, and then she had sent her hand over for the opponent to grab. Miss Yan's move seems to have been completely predicted by this person? How could it be? Lin Jun was not unfamiliar with martial arts, so she suddenly had this inconceivable guess. Ever since the 7 slaughtered demoness made her debut, she was known for her cunning and ever-changing martial arts, but someone actually saw through her, and the conversation between the two of them made her even more dumbfounded. Not bad. Gu Nan let go of Yan Xiaoxiao's hand and said with a faint smile, "At least you didn't waste the past 6 months." At this moment, Yan Xiaoxiao also saw the face of the person in front of her clearly. Her originally cold expression gradually melted, and she even felt a slight urge to cry. Chapter 29. What price was Lin Jun willing to pay? Logically speaking, for the sake of all living beings in the world, it was not impossible for her to feed a demon with her body. The fairy sect also had such a tradition, but who would ask so directly? Lin Jun couldn't help but glare at Gu Nan resentfully. If he were to follow the rules of the righteous path and lay out his chariot, then they would be together forever, returning to the righteous path. Even Mo Soundless and the others could only sigh softly. However, she did not know that Gu Nan was just teasing her casually to see if there would be any missions. He was not really interested in her. Thus, when Lin Jun hesitated, Gu Nan immediately said with a smile, "It seems that fairy can't give me the price I want. I'll take my leave now." As soon as he said that, his figure instantly turned into a black shadow and fled quietly. A moment later, Gu Nan's figure reappeared in a corner of the courtyard. "So, teacher likes the big-breasted fairy from the fairy sect?" Yan Xiaoxiao stood beside him and mumbled in a very soft voice. Gu Nan's face darkened and he said angrily, "What are you mumbling about? Memorize this list and burn it tomorrow morning. Don't miss a single name." Teacher, what's this?" Yan Xiaoxiao giggled, looking a little mischievous. She did not look like an executioner whose hands were stained with blood and had slaughtered tens of thousands of people. A list of people who view the unorthodox Tao as enemies. There was a strange smile on Gu Nan's face. "War is hell for the weak, but heaven for the strong. Gather these people, and you can build an assassin organization that spans 3 states in a short time. It will become the sharpest sword in your hand. A true assassin can do anything to kill, from framing others, to political strife, to moral blackmail. Killing with one's own hands is only the lowest method." The turmoil in the immortal and demonic world continued. The confrontation between the orthodox and unorthodox Tao became more and more intense, and even the mortal nations participated in the war. Amidst the raging flames of war, an assassin organization called Blue Dragon Hall was quietly rising. One by one, those who were dissatisfied with the corrupt path or had their family members killed in the chaos of war were gathered by people who were extremely hostile to the corrupt path and taught them killing technique. As a result, from the south-central region, along the 3 prefectures of the Great Void Mountain Range, there were constantly assassinations of evil path experts. These assassinations were mixed in with the chaos of the war and did not attract much attention. After all, countless experts from both sides died every day. Who would have the time to investigate them one by one? In the west of the south-central region, there was a small manor that seemed out of place in this chaotic world. Here, there was a rare tranquility. No one knew when the snowstorm had started, but a layer of white frost had accumulated at the entrance of the manor. Under the night sky, the sound of horse hooves could be heard approaching. A carriage entered the manor, and a young man dressed in white stepped down from it. returning home on a snowy night. The young man walked in slowly, took off the silver-white cloak behind him, and handed it to the maid beside him. "Where is your young miss?" "Young master, young miss is in the inner hall discussing matters." The young man nodded lightly. Without saying anything, he walked into the garden. Soon, he arrived at the inner hall. There was already a young woman with a solemn expression talking to a middle-aged man. This middle-aged man had a stocky back and a bear's waist. With one look, one could tell that he was a powerful martial artist. However, in front of this young woman who looked like a daughter of a noble family, he seemed submissive and repeatedly nodded. From his words, one could faintly hear the words, "Hall Master." When the young woman saw the young man, she waved her hand and said, "That's all for today. Tonight, have someone send this list of names over." "Yes, Hall Master." The middle-aged man quickly bowed. Then, he slightly bowed to the young man and left the inner hall. "Teacher." Seeing him leave, the young woman revealed a relieved smile. She grabbed the young man's hand and said, "Teacher, you're all alone outside. You've made me work hard here." The young man rolled his eyes. "I only told you to restrain your killing intent. I didn't tell you to treat yourself as a daughter of a noble family. You don't have to speak like that." These two people were naturally Yan Xiaoxiao and Gu Nan. Ever since Gu Nan said, "Right now, you're just short of writing the words, 'I'm a killer,' on your face," Yan Xiaoxiao began to lay down the butcher's knife. She began to be a good daughter of a noble family and also the leader of a killer organization. Yan Xiaoxiao was indeed a natural killer. She had not drawn her sword for almost a month, but Gu Nan believed that once she drew her sword again, her strength would only be greater than before. Faced with Gu Nan's lecture, Yan Xiaoxiao did not take it to heart. She ran behind Gu Nan and massaged his shoulders. She chuckled and said, "Teacher, you came back so quickly this time. Could it be that you've gained something?" Gu Nan narrowed his eyes and enjoyed it for a while. Then, he slowly nodded. "Not bad. After this time, we just need to wait patiently." He paused and asked, "Did anything happen on Du Mian's side?" "Everything is normal." Yan Xiaoxiao covered her mouth and chuckled, but her eyes were cold. "According to teacher's instructions, break the tendons in his limbs once a day." "All right, take me to see him." In the dark dungeon, the two of them walked, one in front and the other behind, all the way to the deepest part. The little devil monarch, Du Mian, who was originally in high spirits, was now covered in wounds. His limbs had been pierced and he was chained to the wall. "Gu Nan, if you have the ability, then kill me. Otherwise, you'll definitely regret it." Du Mian had not seen Gu Nan for a long time. As soon as he saw him, his eyes immediately turned red and he roared angrily. Gu Nan spread his hands helplessly. "I didn't leave these wounds on your body. Even if you want to die, why bother looking for me?" Du Mian's face was a little stiff. Of course, he knew very well who the wounds on his body were, but every time his gaze fell on the girl, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. The dignified, little devil monarch had a firm mind, but the experiences of the past month had almost made his mind collapse, and all his demonic arts had backfired on him. Just because his self-healing ability was outstanding, this woman personally came here every day and used a small knife to cut the tendons in his limbs inch by inch. While cutting, she could actually still maintain her calm, and chatted with him as if nothing had happened. Even when she occasionally talked about her teacher, her face would turn a little red, and her hands still did not make the slightest mistake. Seeing that Du Mian did not speak, Gu Nan stepped forward and patted his shoulder. "Thanks to you, old bro, I finally have a suitable target. You don't have to die." Du Mian was silent for a moment and snorted. "Then you'd better let me go immediately, or else the elders of my sect will find this place at any time." "Of course I'll let you go." Gu Nan looked at Du Mian's eyes as if he was looking at a moving sin value. "But you'll have to wait until you're used up as bait." "What did you say?" Du Mian was suddenly shocked, and an unimaginable thought emerged in his mind. Chapter 30. Han Qiong, Junior Demon Monarch Du Mian's senior uncle and one of the older generation experts of the diabolism, had never paid any attention to a young man. Therefore, when Du Mian said that, he didn't react immediately. It wasn't until the young man, who was less than 10 meters away from him, appeared in front of him at an unbelievable speed that the old demon's expression changed. Shadow power! Weakness detection! Dragon power! This was the first time Gu Nan had used his full strength since his fight with Wen Zhangfeng. The shadow earring, the observer's eyepiece, and the dragon heart pendant glowed at the same time. The shadow under his feet spread out and turned into 2 black claws that grabbed Han Qiong's ankles. The punch that had been strengthened by the dragon power smashed toward Han Qiong's head. As long as one was extremely fast, no matter if it was a fist or a sword, any weapon would be fatal. Moreover, one couldn't dodge it and could only take it head-on. Han Qiong was feeling this way. His opponent's punch was too fast. He didn't have time to use his skills because of his underestimation. He could only barely make a hand gesture and cross his arms to block the attack. Crack! Du Mian, who was next to him, clearly heard the sound of bones breaking and felt the terrifying power coming toward him. His face had already turned pale. He seems to have become stronger again. Gu Nan had indeed become stronger. After unlocking the 3rd equipment tab, his explosive power was no longer at the peak Khanate level. His physique and speed had surpassed it in all aspects. The existence of the Dragonheart pendant gave him a way to threaten the transcendent master in front of him. The strengthening of the dragon power wasn't unlimited. The stronger one was, the weaker the strengthening would be. With Gu Nan's current strength, he could roughly strengthen his strength to that of a novice rank 3. A novice rank 3, not a novice transcendent. Such a punch was enough for Han Qiong, a native transcendent, to take seriously. However, Gu Nan had taken advantage of his underestimation and used Du Mian as bait to distract him. That was why he had unintentionally punched such a punch. Senior Han Qiong was in trouble. He was knocked to the ground by the punch, but he quickly got up and stared at Gu Nan with a red face. His injury wasn't very serious. It was just that his left wrist was broken. At most, he wouldn't use his left hand for a while. What he was really angry about was that he had been injured by a junior with 1 punch. The difference between a transcendent and a Khanate was like the difference between an immortal and a mortal. Yet, he had been injured by a mortal. The sense of honor that came from his social class kept provoking Han Qiong, causing his anger to accumulate even more. Brat, I want you to die without a burial. Ha 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 ha. Come at me then. Gu Nan's arrogant laughter answered him, as well as the back view of him flying away. His strength had reached the peak of the innate realm, and his speed was even more terrifying. With the help of the shadow power, Gu Nan could indeed run faster than a rabbit. Han Qiong disregarded Du Mian's dissuasion and fiercely stomped her foot before her entire body shot out explosively like a cannonball. After all, she was a transcendent grandmaster who could completely suppress an innate-level existence. Han Qiong's speed was not slow at all, and she quickly closed the distance between her and Gu Nan, even though Gu Nan was only using half of his speed. Even back then, when Zhangfeng had only caught up to Gu Nan because of the uniqueness of the Qi class, Gu Nan's speed had already far surpassed that of ordinary transcendents. However, since Gu Nan had the intention to seduce her, he naturally wouldn't get rid of Han Qiong. Just like that, he pulled out the 4-origin crossbow. Han Qiong sneered inwardly. Given the current situation, he would be able to catch up in 2 breaths of time. That was until a blue crossbow bolt flew over. Wind energy reverberated in the snowy night. Of course, such an arrow would not be able to harm Han Qiong, but it would be able to block his attack. On the other hand, Gu Nan was the exact opposite. He used the recoil of the wind crossbow bolt to charge forward a bit more, increasing the distance between them once again. Han Xiong's eyes turned slightly cold. He did not say anything else and simply held his breath as he chased. His opponent was only an innate level. How long could he maintain this full speed for? Han Xiong was confident that he could exhaust his opponent to death. Sure enough, before long, he once again caught up to Gu Nan, and Gu Nan once again used the wind crossbow bolt to increase the distance between them. After a few rounds of this, just as Han Xiong expected, her opponent's speed gradually decreased, and the extremely fast crossbow bolt no longer appeared. "Humph! Your inner breath is almost at its limit, isn't it?" Han Xiong sneered inwardly as he sped up again, rapidly closing the distance between them. However, he did not notice that as the two of them flew further away, they had already arrived at an unknown region. As if he had been forced into a corner, Gu Nan suddenly turned around and charged towards Han Xiong. Han Xiong immediately perked up. He knew that her opponent was out of strength and was about to go all out. Han Xiong was also an experienced martial artist. The more it was like this, the more cautious he became. However, he would never have thought that every step of his thinking would be completely calculated by his opponent. Seeing that his opponent had indeed become cautious, Gu Nan smiled inwardly. He put away the four-origin crossbow and attacked with all his might, completely disregarding his own safety. He attacked with a punch and a kick in midair, completely ignoring the black force around Han Xiong's body. He wanted to exchange injury for injury. "You're courting death." Seeing his opponent in this state, Han Xiong's sneer deepened, and he retaliated with a punch without hesitation. As a transcendent master, how could he be afraid of exchanging injuries with an innate level? Bang! The dull sound of their fists colliding could be heard. Gu Nan was directly sent flying by this punch, while Han Xiong was completely unharmed. However, he did not expect that as his opponent was sent flying, a red crossbow bolt would be shot at him. It landed right on his chest, and the violent explosion also sent him flying. The explosion did not hurt Han Xiong, but he was slightly puzzled. His strength has decreased so much. Could it be some kind of secret technique? Han Xiong sensed that Gu Nan's strength had greatly decreased, and he immediately understood. Humph! As expected, he's only at the innate level. Han Xiong felt confident that he had seen through his opponent's technique. Meanwhile, Gu Nan broke out of the smoke. His right hand had already been broken in the previous exchange, so he used his left hand to attack Han Xiong. Han Xiong was very puzzled, and he casually threw a punch in response. However, he was secretly surprised. Does this person not want to live anymore? However, the outcome was beyond his expectations. A terrifying force came from Gu Nan's fist, and Han Xiong's hand followed in his footsteps. His bones were directly shattered by this strange force. B*****. Han Xiong bellowed angrily, finally realizing that he had fallen into a trap. However, Gu Nan was already nowhere to be seen. The two of them had been chasing each other for more than 5 minutes, and the cooldown period for colossal dragon power had already ended. Therefore, Gu Nan played a trick and injured Han Xiong again. He retreated at full speed, and in the blink of an eye, Gu Nan was already several dozen feet away from Han Xiong. Chapter 31. Players always had a strong goal in everything they did. They would not do anything without benefits. As a top player, Gu Nan was not only good at completing quests, but he was also good at achieving multiple goals by doing one thing. For example, ever since he received the news of Bai Luolua's corruption, he had been thinking about how to solve it. Gu Nan already had a set of procedures in his mind on how to reshape the little lowly's worldview. Now, the preparatory work was complete. Returning to the astral realm, it had been almost 10 days since he last met Bai Luoluo. Gu Nan walked to the table and quickly skimmed through the message that Gu Nian had sent. His lips curled into a smile as he casually replied Gu Nian. Let's begin. It was late at night. In the mansion of care for one's family, Bai Luoluo lay alone on the bed. She curled up into a ball and wrapped the blanket tightly around her body. The Pure Heart Path was an extremely powerful and strange cultivation method. Cultivating this path could stabilize a cultivator's Taoist heart and strengthen their willpower. It was most suitable for inexperienced youths. However, once the strongest link was broken, it would become the weakest link. For those who cultivated the Pure Heart Path, once their Taoist heart collapsed, it would be extremely difficult to return to the right path. Bai Luoluo was in such a state. Eldest senior sister is this kind of person? She's been lying to me, but why would she lie to me? I'm not a child. For the sake of the family, even if I'm cruel. Bai Luoluo was not purely naive. The true contradiction of her pure heart path lay in some deeper questions that even she had been avoiding. Just as she was still struggling with these questions, a series of battle cries came from outside the house. Kill. If that bitch Gu Nian doesn't come out, we'll kill everyone in care for one's family. That's right. That Gu Nian is vicious and merciless. Back then, she destroyed my entire Wang family. Today, we'll let her have a taste of annihilation. Brothers, follow me and kill. Bai Luoluo jumped up from the bed. Even if there was a problem with her Tao heart, it didn't mean that her power had disappeared. In the face of a matter of life and death, her survival instinct made her quickly raise her spirit. But she was still surprised. Ever since she came to the astral realm, care for one's family and Gu Nian's omnipotent image had left a deep impression on her. All of a sudden, someone came to kill her. She couldn't react to such a sudden change. The enemy didn't give her a chance to react. Before Bai Luoluo came back to her senses, the door had been kicked open with a bang, revealing the figures of two big men with knives. When the two of them saw Bai Luoluo, they didn't even say a word and just pulled out their swords. Damn it! Bai Luoluo's heart tightened and she quickly dodged. But the two of them didn't let her go. They chased after her with two knives, and each knife was aimed at Bai Luoluo's throat. This was a fighting method that left no survivors. Although she had practiced martial arts since she was a child, it was the first time that she faced a life-and-death battle. Bai Luoluo couldn't help but become nervous, and her body's movements also began to change slightly. In the face of two experienced opponents, this little bit of nervousness was fatal. In less than 2 rounds, Bai Luoluo's shoulder was slashed by a knife, and blood instantly gushed out. Run! The severe pain made her even more flustered, and she quickly turned around to escape. Then, she made an even more serious mistake, leaving her back to the enemy. The two big men looked at each other and laughed at the same time. After a few leaps, they caught up with the little lowly. They didn't have the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex, and they slashed several times in a row. Ah! The pain from her back almost made the little lowly cry. But in the face of life and death, there was no time for tears. Run, she had to run with her life. She didn't know how long she ran, and she didn't know where she was. Bai Luoluo didn't even have the courage to look back until she was exhausted. She fell in front of a ruined wall and gasped for breath. However, a voice mixed with a sneer sounded beside her. Run? Why don't you continue to run? Big brother, wait. This little girl looks quite pretty. Why? Are you interested? How can it be? Care for one's family, bitch. I want to scratch her face and sell her to the west of the city. Bai Luoluo was flustered. She struggled to get up, but she felt that her whole body had no strength, and her whole consciousness was gradually lost. The price of putting on such a show in the city center is not small. I hope you won't let me down. Gu Nian looked at the bruised Bai Luoluo, and signaled the doctor next to him to apply medicine for her. Then, he turned to look at Gu Nan. Anyway, it can't be worse than now. Gu Nan looked indifferent. Moreover, if you didn't want to control this girl personally, how could you end up like this? There were many ways to practice the pure heart path, but Gu Nian chose the list-style cultivation. In Gu Nan's view, of course, this was because she wanted to strengthen her control over Bai Luoluo. Even if she grew up in the future, she would not betray care for one's family, at least not herself. Gu Nan always speculated in the most malicious way about the purpose of anyone's actions. The veins on Gu Nan's forehead twitched. What a vile person! Why do you think I asked you to go the same way as her when I left? Gu Nan was stunned for a moment, and then laughed awkwardly. It turned out that the first person to be used as a role model was himself. In the end, he was kidnapped to the Minglu, so Gu Nan had to do it himself. So Gu Nan coughed softly. In that case, leave it to me. When Bai Luoluo woke up again, the first thing she felt was the nauseating smell of blood, mixed with the smell of sweat, rotting corpses, excrement, and so on. She opened her eyes with difficulty, and then she understood her current situation. Mass grave, there were corpses covered with blood everywhere. Under her left palm, there was a prolapsed eyeball, and there were 2 pieces of broken intestines hanging on her stomach. It was not her own. If it was before, perhaps the little loli would have already screamed. Now, she resisted the nausea, slowly stood up, and moved to the side with difficulty. There was a small river there. Feeling that her body was fine, Bai Luoluo decided to wash herself first. However, when the river reflected her face, she finally couldn't help but scream. Who is this? Bai Luoluo suddenly sat on the ground. The appearance of the person in the water was completely different from before, except for one thing: her face was scratched with a sharp object. Only then did the little loli feel the burning pain on her face. There were dozens of wounds of different depths, and they constantly stimulated her nerves. Why is it like this? Bai Luoluo finally couldn't help but cry out. Her hands fiercely hit the ground, as if she was complaining about fate. Are you the lucky one who survived the war? A soft voice came from her ear. It's quite pitiful to have your face disfigured. You will follow me from now on. Chapter 32. After sending the little white loli to the immortal and demon world, Gu Nan stayed in the astral realm and did not start a new round of reincarnation. When he was setting up in the immortal and demon world, Gu Nan sent him several messages, urging him to find an identity in the astral realm as soon as possible. The astral realm was an autonomous federal system. The situation in the 9th star sector was that the 3 administrative planets looked after each other, and the residents of the Red Carp only needed to accept the jurisdiction of the Red Carp government. Gu Nan entered the Red Carp with a legal identity, and naturally came under the supervision of the government. If he lived in seclusion for a long time, he would soon attract the attention of the relevant departments, which would be a very troublesome matter. Because reincarnation was illegal. That's right, although many people in the astral realm used reincarnation as a way of cultivation, reincarnation was an illegal act under the current law. Once discovered, there would not be any punishment, but the cultivator himself would be expelled from the country. When Gu Nan first heard about this, he was also in a state of confusion. Later, he found out that reincarnation was not in line with humanitarianism. On the other hand, Gu Nan really needed a job in the astral realm. Qin Xuanji also told him about the way to obtain world missions in the astral realm. Most of the materials needed were relatively common, but one of them needed to be made by buying raw materials. Gu Nan did not want to buy such a key material through others to care for one's family, so he could only find a way to buy it himself. So, the job that Gu Nan found for me is to be a combat coach? Gu Nan asked casually as he walked down from a hover car and followed behind the girl. Big sister said this is the best for you. Gu Xingzhu turned around and looked up and down at Gu Nan's small body. The words, "I don't believe it," were written on her face. Gu Nan was already half a parent of care for one's family. As the only person of the younger generation who had advanced to the transcendent level, she had too many things to do. Of course, she could not look for Gu Nan all day. Therefore, Gu Xingzhu became their liaison. Originally, Gu Xingzhu was not very willing to contact the poisonous snake Gu Nan, but she could not disobey Gu Nian's order. Lu Xinyu's understanding of Gu Xingzhu was actually old history. In fact, Lu Xinyu's understanding of Gu Xingzhu was already quite old. Ever since Gu Nianji had ascended, competition had lost its meaning unless a second extraordinary level master was born before Gu Nianji completely took control of the Gu family. Gu Xingzhu was one of the first to surrender to Gu Nianji. Transcendent and innate transcendent level. Gu Nan did not react to Gu Xingzhu's doubts. He only nodded and said, "It's indeed suitable for me." Fortunately, Gu Nian could help Gu Nan find such a suitable job. He only needed to come here a few times a week, and he could even ask for leave in advance. Even his profession was quite suitable. Gu Nan's forte had never been in martial arts, but in fighting technique. Gu Nianji already knew this when she was in the Langya world. Gu Xingzhu shrugged and said, "Then come in with me. I have to remind you that the boss of this fight club is not easy to talk to." Gu Nan did not even reply this time. The two of them walked into the fight club called Samsara, one after the other. A fight club with such an artistic name was still thriving. It was obvious that it was not simple. "Xingzhu? How come you have time to come here today?" A young girl saw the two of them and asked in pleasant surprise, "How about a round?" "Sure. I've improved a lot in the past 2 months." Gu Xingzhu smiled brightly when she saw the girl. When the girl walked closer, she said, "But I have to bring him to see your brother first. This is Gu Nan. He's here to apply for the fight coach position. He's my distant cousin." "Cousin?" Gu Nan emphasized indifferently. Gu Xingzhu's face darkened. She rolled her eyes at him and introduced, "Wang Lizzie, the second in command of this club. Her brother is the boss." Wang Lizzie looked at Gu Nan curiously, and Gu Nan had the same expression. "Wang Lizzie, is your brother called Wang Strawberry?" "Of course not. What man is called Strawberry?" Wang Lizzie showed a look of disdain. "He's called Wang Jelly." "Oh, that's very manly." Gu Nan nodded. The three of them walked together and soon arrived inside the club to meet the legendary boss, Wang Jelly. When they saw him, he was teaching a few students. When he saw the three of them, he let the students train on their own for the time being and walked over. Wang Jelly was also a slightly skinny man. He looked to be in his 30s, but one could not judge a book by its cover. Not only was he the boss of the club, he was also the #1 coach. In other words, he was the best fighter here. Wang Jelly was quite direct. "You're Gu Nan, right? You're here at the right time. We've always been short of coaches, but we can't find a professional. Let's try first?" "Okay, is it here?" Gu Nan didn't say much and just looked around. This should be a public training room. Many coaches were training the students, and there were many people around watching. "Yes." Wang Jelly nodded without hesitation. Then he felt that it was a little rude, so he explained with a smile, "Sorry, it's training time now." Gu Nan nodded. Just as he was about to speak, someone ran over in a hurry. "Brother Jelly, Miss Sue." It was a man in a coach's uniform. He ran to Wang Jelly's side and said anxiously. Halfway through, he realized that there was an outsider present and quickly shut his mouth. Wang Jelly did not care about this. He frowned and said, "Even old Lin can't do it?" "Yes." The man smiled bitterly. "Miss Sue came to the club again tonight. Coach Lin lost 5 matches. According to the previous agreement, it's time for you to be my personal coach, Coach Wang." A slightly cold female voice came from behind the man and took over his words. Everyone could not help but look back. They saw a girl in loose sportswear standing there with a cold expression. Her hands were crossed in front of her chest, and the cuffs on her right hand were slightly torn. With one look, Gu Nan knew that it was caused by the recent battle. "This is Su Fian, the pearl of Su's family. Don't provoke her." Gu Xingzhu whispered in Gu Nan's ear, as if she was afraid that he would stand up for her. In Gu Xingzhu's eyes, Gu Nan was a complete prick who dared to do anything that was taboo. Of course, this perception did not seem to be wrong. The pearl of the family. So, she's very rich? Gu Nan thought for a moment and asked. Of course she's rich. Gu Xingzhu answered subconsciously, but then she glared at him fiercely. She's very rich, but you have to be alive to take it. Chapter 33. 20 standard units of star iron. Thank you. In the middle of the night, Gu Nan walked out of the rare metal shop alone, cursing the price of the last material in his heart. His work as a personal trainer was calculated by the number of sessions. He had received 3 sessions of training in advance from Jelly Wang before he came to buy star iron. Jelly Wang was straightforward and agreed without hesitation. In fact, if Gu Nan could help him get rid of the scourge, Su Fian, not to mention this small amount of salary, he was even willing to double it. However, all the money Gu Nan had on him was only enough to buy 20 units of the material. To purify star iron, at least half of it will be consumed. I don't know how many times it will be used in the end. Gu Nan cursed in his heart. He found a reason to postpone the training of Su Fian to the next time. It was also somewhat selfish, because he was in a hurry to buy star iron and search for free world missions. With his current 48 sin points, as long as he did one more mission, there was a high chance that he could break through the 50 mark. Once he became a transcendent, he would have the capital to settle down in the astral world. When he returned to the hidden hut that Gu Nianji had provided for him, there were already 2 people waiting there. As soon as they saw Gu Nan, they came up to him and said, "Mr. Gu, Miss wants to take Miss Bai back." Gu Nan looked into the room. Bai Luo was lying in the culture chamber, her whole body soaked in green nutrient solution. The injuries on her body had basically recovered, and there was not a trace of injury on her face. She was sent to the immortal and demon world by Gu Nan after she fainted, so her body was naturally left in the astral world. Previously, Gu Nan wanted to protect the coordinates of the immortal and demon world and personally guided her to reincarnate, but now it didn't matter. "And you can bring her back." So Gu Nan nodded. "Tell Gu Nian, if there are any changes in her, inform me immediately." With regards to the incident, Gu Nan would definitely not take it lightly. Yes. After sending off Bai Luo, Gu Nan took out the star iron that he had just obtained. He placed it in a jade container and placed it on the flame. Star iron was a very special kind of metal. It had to be stored in cold storage. It would melt into a liquid with just a little bit of heat, and it would quickly vaporize if the temperature was just a little bit higher. The flame Gu Nan used was also very special. It was ignited by a special fuel, snow congealing ointment, which could control the temperature and keep the star iron in a liquid state. This step was quite smooth, and he succeeded in a short while. Gu Nan then threw in some golden powder. The golden powder was the fine gold used as an absorbent. As soon as it entered the liquid, the entire liquid began to shrink rapidly. The original black color also began to rapidly turn into gold. "It's done, it's not that hard." Gu Nan heaved a sigh of relief. The entire purification process took less than 2 minutes, but the technical content was not simple. At least, even an official alchemist would not be able to pick out Gu Nan's mistake. After all, he had practiced this many times in the world of immortals and demons. The final result was similar to what Gu Nan had expected. 20 units of star iron could only produce 8 units of star gold. The purification rate was only 40%. However, this could not be helped. Gu Nan quickly calmed himself down and began to immerse himself in the drawing of the formation pattern. The method that Qin Xuanji provided him to accept the task was to find a platform that publicized the task to the outside world, and then accept and complete the task in a private manner. The existence of the world's task was very strange. They were produced by the world's will, but they also drifted away from the world's will. There must be a professional translator to let the cultivator understand the meaning. As the business of reincarnation became popular, organizations that specialized in translation gradually formed and released tasks to the outside world to benefit from it. Completing the world's task could indeed benefit, but most of these benefits were obtained by the translators. For example, Ming Lu and the organization that Gu Nan was about to contact. As the inscription on the ground lit up, a golden light gradually emerged. A line of text was directly reflected in his line of sight. Welcome to the Astral Gate. Newcomer, please leave your code name. Evil God. Code name confirmed. You currently have level E authority. Please check the available task. Astral Gate, this was the name of this organization. As an organization that was open to all reincarnators, their docking system was very complete. It could even be completed by Gu Nan alone. Gu Nan used his consciousness to click on the task list. However, there was no series of tasks appearing. Instead, another sentence appeared. Detected that this is your first time accepting a task. You will be randomly assigned 5 available tasks. You will need to wait for 1 day to refresh the task. Detected that this is your first time accepting a task. You will need to pay 5 units of star gold as a deposit. The deposit will be returned after the first task is completed. 2 consecutive notifications popped up, causing Gu Nan's eyelids to twitch. He could only choose 5 tasks at a time. The cooldown period for resetting the task was 1 day. He also needed to pay 5 units of star gold as a deposit. 1 unit of star gold was only enough to open the astral gate twice. In the end, it asked for 5 units at once. Fortunately, it was only a deposit. In order to earn sin points, Gu Nan couldn't care so much anymore. He immediately started to check the task. In Gu Nan's eyes, the difficulty of the 5 tasks was not high. They were all small-scale tasks. However, one of them attracted his attention at first glance. Task objective: protect the White Dew Goddess. Task plane: foreign world, White Fog Plane. Task accepted count: 3 task details. Head to the plane and protect the target for 5 days. This task is a team task. The maximum number of people is 4. Gu Nan frowned. A team task with a count of 3 meant that 3 people had already accepted the task. However, someone did not agree and wanted to wait for 1 more person. After all, the more people there were, the higher the chance of completing the task. What attracted Gu Nan's attention the most was the task itself. White Dew Goddess. This is a character in the game. Gu Nan couldn't help but recall his past life. He remembered the time he struggled in the game. There was even a dungeon to protect the White Dew Goddess in the game. He just didn't know if it was the same in this life. Unexpectedly seeing a familiar task, Gu Nan didn't hesitate and chose to accept it. Task accepted successfully. The number of people has reached the limit. Please start the task as soon as possible. After accepting the task, the light of the astral gate dimmed. After all, this was only a platform to accept tasks and not a reincarnation circle. Gu Nan activated the reincarnation ritual beside him. He entered the coordinates of the plane and the reincarnation ritual appeared again. Gu Nan's body was stored in the endless void. His soul was slowly pulled out and entered the reincarnation gate. Chapter 34. Players were the most bored group of people in the world. If they had enough time, they could study every detail of the game and the characteristics of every NPC. Protect the Goddess of White Dew was a level 2 instance dungeon and one of the early dungeons in the game. It could be reset infinitely in the game. When players became strong enough to conquer the dungeons, there would naturally be bored people who would come back and study these dungeons thoroughly. Not only did they know the strategy, but they also knew the story background and the NPC's Easter eggs. So, when Gu Nan saw the old Mayor Moffat, he immediately felt relieved. If this was the dungeon in the game, he could clear it even with his eyes closed. While Gu Nan was looking around, the other 3 people had already started talking to the mayor to find out more about the quest. Gu Nan listened on the side for a while, and was surprised to find that the standard of these 3 people was much higher than Ming Lu's group of people when it came to completing missions. Even Land Marigold, who previously looked like a silly girl, was so capable that she didn't seem like the same person. Is it because a solo reincarnator has to rely on themselves, so they are more capable, or is it because the overall standard of the branch is too low? This question surfaced in Gu Nan's mind. Luo Xing and Danny had already walked far away. Land Marigold looked at Gu Nan with a puzzled expression. "Aren't you going to learn more about the quest?" Gu Nan shook his head, indicating that he wasn't interested. Of course, he could even recite the lines of a few key NPCs. What was there to learn? Land Marigold looked at him strangely, but in the end she didn't say anything. In her eyes, Gu Nan's image was somewhat mysterious. It had been like this since they started in the astral realm. She didn't expect him to be a reincarnator. A moment later, the 3 people gathered again. The information they received was more or less the same. The demon army will invade from the west. We have half a day to prepare, Danny summarized in simple words. Luo Xing nodded and added, "There are items in town that can restrain demons. If we participate in the battle, we can use them for free. However, these items are limited, so we have to use them carefully," Land Marigold said with a frown. The 3 of them spoke one after another, then turned their heads to look at Gu Nan. Although it was necessary to share information as companions, if you wanted to get information for free, of course, no one would immediately turn hostile, but secretly rolling their eyes was unavoidable. Land Marigold's eyes revealed a trace of ridicule. She really wanted to use this opportunity to probe Gu Nan's background. Gu Nan didn't think too much about it. In order to complete the mission, he didn't mind giving them some pointers. "Do you see that?" Gu Nan pointed to a little white dog on the side of the road. The 3 of them turned their heads at the same time, startling the white dog. "What's wrong with that dog?" Luo Xing asked curiously. "This dog is called a green-feathered dog. There are 3 of them in this town. On the first day, a flying demon will appear. Use the neck hair of the green-feathered hound to lure it over and kill it." Gu Nan didn't even bat an eyelid as he said, "If we don't do this, we can only rely on a large amount of molten fire medicine to kill it. That would be a huge loss." This guide was so detailed that Luo Xing and Danny looked at each other. The latter hesitantly said, "This town isn't big, so it's not difficult to find dogs. But, how did you know?" "Oh, a beggar just passed by and told me," Gu Nan said casually. The 3 of them looked at him in disbelief. "You don't believe me? Then there's nothing I can do." Gu Nan shrugged. The beggar left. Even though they didn't really believe Gu Nan's excuse, finding 3 dogs wasn't a difficult task, so they believed him for the time being. As companions on the mission, their standpoints were very pure. There was no conflict of interest between them, so why would he lie to them? After collecting the fur of the 3 dogs, the 3 of them asked the people in the town what help they could provide. They got a bunch of weapons, medicine, and methods to restrain demons. The 3 of them were quite good at the mission. They knew that these things wouldn't all be used on the first day, so they found a place not far from the front line as a temporary stronghold and storage place. This way, it would be convenient for resting personnel to rush over, and it would also make it easier to control the resources. During this process, Land Marigold and the other 2 were basically busy, while Gu Nan was the observer. Although Gu Nan knew what they would need on the first day, he couldn't say it all. That would make him look too fake. How could a beggar know so much? The first wave of attack came in the evening. Like a tide of monsters, they made people's scalps go numb. These monsters all looked strange and terrifying. There were 6-headed ogres, 10-meter-tall evil eyes, and giant spiders that were dozens of meters long. Are these demons? Although Danny was experienced, she had never seen such a scene. She couldn't help but feel her breathing quicken. Luo Xing's face was also somewhat pale. On the other hand, Land Marigold was able to maintain her calm. After all, she was from a large family. As for Gu Nan, it didn't matter. If these people had seen the scene of war in God Kingdom, they would know that this couldn't even be considered a small skirmish. Don't be in a hurry. This is just the vanguard of the demons. Let the NPCs, let the natives exhaust them first, Gu Nan said calmly, almost spilling the beans. Perhaps they were infected by Gu Nan's calm tone, but they subconsciously chose to listen. The town guards also rushed out and charged at the demonic army from all directions. The ground outside the town was instantly dyed red. The demons didn't make Gu Nan and the others wait for too long. After a short while, 4 larger demons appeared. They were obviously the leaders of the small group. Let's do it, Gu Nan commanded out of habit. Pay attention to the demons around them. Those are elite guards. Their stats are 30% higher than normal guards. The 3 of them were stunned. After saying this, Gu Nan shook his head slightly. He thought to himself, I've gotten too into character. He ran straight for the front lines. The first day's attack was to allow the players to get used to the gameplay, so it wouldn't be too difficult. According to this world's calculations, the strength of the demon leaders was roughly around innate stage 5. Luo Xing and Danny were both innate stage 6, and Land Marigold was slightly weaker at innate stage 5. If they weren't on the battlefield and surrounded by elite guards, the 4 of them would be able to deal with them in a few moves. Luo Xing was a martial adept. He used a giant sword, and with a single sweep, he killed over 10 demons. He charged straight into the battlefield. Danny, on the other hand, was a spirit-type adept. She muttered an incantation, and a ball of fire rained down around the demon leaders. Screams of agony rang out. Land Marigold was slightly weaker, but she practiced martial arts and spirit-type secret arts. She was extremely agile, and with a few jumps, she entered the battlefield. Any demon that got close to her was charmed, and they couldn't even get within 3 feet of her. The 3 of them used their own methods to take control of the battlefield. Then, they turned to look at Gu Nan. They were very curious about this mysterious companion of theirs. Chapter 35. Gu Nan's target was the furthest, and he wasn't moving very quickly. So, when the 3 of them looked at him, he was just about to come into contact with the demons. The 3 of them were waiting to see how he would deal with the demons, but they never expected that Gu Nan would disappear into thin air right before their eyes. Without any warning, without any fluctuation of internal energy, he disappeared as if he had become a living person. Land Marigold, who had been paying the most attention to Gu Nan, froze. She was almost caught by a demon. In just half a breath's time, Gu Nan's figure appeared out of thin air again. He had already circled to the back of the demon leader and fiercely punched it. The demon leader didn't even have a chance to react. His head burst open, and red and white fluid splashed all over the ground. The surrounding demons fell silent. Roar! Following that, a louder and louder roar sounded, but Gu Nan had already left. The entire process didn't take more than half a minute. The 3 onlookers were dumbfounded until Gu Nan shouted, "What are you guys looking at? Hurry up and get rid of the target!" Night slowly fell. The first wave of attacks was nearing its end, and 3 waves of demon leaders had appeared. Although the intensity of the attacks had increased, the 4 of them could still easily deal with them. This was especially true for Gu Nan. Not a single demon could withstand a single punch from him. Luo Xing couldn't help but wonder if his greatsword could withstand a single punch from Gu Nan. "The flying demon you mentioned, is it going to appear?" The 4 of them stood within the town's walls. Land Marigold couldn't help but ask Gu Nan curiously. At this moment, they no longer doubted Gu Nan's words. However, they still didn't have any concept of what a flying demon was. "How would I know? That beggar didn't say anything." Gu Nan rolled his eyes and casually replied. Of course, he knew very well that when there was only 1% of the demons left, the flying demon would appear. "It's here." A sharp laughter rang out, and Gu Nan immediately became spirited. He hurriedly called out to the others, Bring out the neck fur of the green-feathered dog. Not long after, balls of light green fur were placed in front of Gu Nan. According to the theory in the game, the hair on the neck of the green-feathered hound had the ability to absorb energy. Before it lost its vitality, it could automatically gather air energy, which was a fatal temptation for the flying demon. A black silhouette rose and fell a few times in the distant sky, quickly arriving before the four of them. An astonishing aura spread out. Transcendence! Luo Xing exclaimed. No, it's a pseudo-transcendent. Land Marigold, who was at the side, said in a low voice. He only has the embryonic form of the supernatural power. His actual realm has not reached that stage yet. The so-called pseudo-transcendent referred to experts who already possessed basic divine abilities but had yet to reach the required realm. In fact, the current Gu Nan was also considered to be at this stage. However, even if she wasn't a true transcendent, Land Marigold's expression didn't look good. Firstly, pseudo-transcendents were not easy to deal with. Secondly, this was only the first day. A pseudo-transcendent had actually appeared. How were they going to deal with it? Luo Xing's expression was solemn, while Danny gritted her teeth, seemingly considering how to deal with it. Only Gu Nan's expression didn't change. More than half of the neck hair on the table had been grabbed by the flying demon, while the rest was taken by Gu Nan. The flying demon, who had stopped, had already revealed itself. Its skin was green, it had a big bald head, a green face, and sharp fangs. It was very much in line with the image of a demon. It stuffed the neck hair into its mouth and swallowed it. Then, it looked at Gu Nan, roared fiercely, and clawed at him. Be careful! Land Marigold and the other two exclaimed at the same time. This demon clearly had a speed-type supernatural power, so its physical strength was definitely not to be underestimated. However, Gu Nan laughed sinisterly, and the dragon heart pendant on his neck suddenly lit up. His right hand reached out and instantly grabbed the demon's arm. The flying demon was stunned. It didn't see how the other party moved at all, and it instantly had a bad feeling. Gu Nan grabbed its arm and lifted it up, and then he smashed it heavily onto the ground behind him. A terrifying bang resounded out, and a crack actually appeared on the ground from the impact. Boom! 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 Gu Nan had no intention of stopping. He swung the flying demon around like a ball. Only after 5 seconds had passed did Gu Nan slowly let go. At that moment, the flying demon could only lie on the ground, foaming at the mouth and unable to make a single sound. Gu Nan exhaled softly. Then, he raised the dragon heart pendant and smiled at the three of them. Unconventional means, have a good rest tonight. Tomorrow's attack will be even fiercer. Night had completely fallen. Gu Nan was alone in the temporary tent, his eyes closed as he rested. He had practically single-handedly dealt with the first day's attack. Naturally, this wasn't because Gu Nan was willing to help others. Rather, he felt that there was no need to use up the limited support items he had on the first day. Even though it was a low-level instance dungeon, the difficulty of White Dew Guardian was not low. His goal was to deal with the last 2 days in the best condition possible. When a true expert carried a smurf, they would never only care about showing off. Instead, they would try their best to reduce the difficulty of the quest. Of course, it would be even better if they could show off while they were at it. Gu Nan. A soft call came from outside the temporary tent. The corners of Gu Nan's mouth could not help but reveal a trace of a smile. Come in. Land Marigold's figure appeared. She seemed to be complaining and asking, why did you come to this place? Anyway, the demons will only come tomorrow. You should have a good rest and rest up. They had chased away the demons today and were the town's heroes. Naturally, they had a comfortable place to stay. Isn't it convenient for me to wait for you to come? Gu Nan said with a faint smile. If I stayed there, there would be too many people. That was actually an excuse, because Gu Nan knew that there would be a wave of demons attacking at night. If he stayed in the temporary tent in advance, It would not be too abrupt when he attacked. Naturally, Land Marigold did not know about that. When she heard Gu Nan's words, an indescribable look flashed through her eyes. However, she smiled and said, "Let's do it." It was common for reincarnations to do it. On one hand, the quest was stressful. On the other hand, it was not their own body, so there was no loss. "Okay, take off your clothes." Gu Nan's eyes were calm and there was a faint smile on his face. Land Marigold's mouth twitched. In the end, she did not do anything. The two of them looked at each other silently for 3 seconds. In the end, Miss Lu could not take it anymore. She said in a deep voice, "I want to tell you today that this quest is not as simple as you think." Gu Nan's face finally revealed a look of curiosity. He wanted to know what else he did not know about this instant's dungeon. Land Marigold hesitated for a moment. "It is not convenient for me to go into the details. I hope I am overthinking it. Anyway, be careful of Danny." Be careful of Danny? Gu Nan's mind flashed through his companion's previous actions. He did not see anything wrong. After saying that, Land Marigold turned to leave. However, just as she was about to walk out of the tent, Gu Nan's words came from behind her, almost causing her to stumble. Chapter 36. When Gu Nan and Luo Xing arrived outside the house, a loud roar could be heard coming from inside. As an experienced veteran in his previous life, Gu Nan naturally knew what this roar meant. On the other hand, Land Marigold's face was flushed red. This adulterous couple, Gu Nan smiled. He did not say anything and pushed open the door. Inside the house, the two people were doing what everyone loved to do. The bedding had already fallen to the ground and the two of them were naked. When they saw Gu Nan and Land Marigold enter, they jumped in fright. "Gu Nan? Why are you here?" Luo Xing was a little embarrassed, but he did not fly into a rage. Perhaps to him, this was not a big deal. Before Gu Nan could say anything, Land Marigold angrily said, "Danny, stop pretending. You're an enemy mission enforcer." Only then did Luo Xing's expression change. He retracted his arms from Danny. It wasn't that he did not suspect Danny's strange behavior today. Firstly, she had fallen into a sweet dream. Secondly, she did not consider it as an enemy mission. Now that he heard Land Marigold's words, he became vigilant. Danny was stunned. It took her a long time to react. You're talking nonsense." Land Marigold sneered. "If it wasn't an enemy mission, would you, a Sciention Stage 6 expert, be injured by a low-level demon on the battlefield?" Danny's face turned green and white, but she could not find a reason. Luo Xing felt a chill in his heart when he saw her like this. He hurriedly climbed out of the bed. Danny stared at him in a daze. "Speechless? Then prepare to die." Land Marigold was like a hot-tempered little girl. She raised her hand and slapped Danny's forehead, killing her instantly. Luo Xing could only watch as she made her move. He could not react in time. Both he and Danny were seriously injured and could not resist. He could only look at Gu Nan. She did the right thing. Gu Nan chuckled. "Since he's a traitor, of course we have to eliminate him as soon as possible, and we don't have much time left." "What?" This time, even Land Marigold was stunned. "The final wave has arrived." As Gu Nan's voice faded, the battle cries that rose and fell outside the town finally reached their ears. "Gu Nan, thank goodness I have you." Outside the town, Land Marigold heaved a sigh of relief when she saw the traps and arrow towers that had been set up long ago. The evil demon army was completely blocked outside. Her eyes were a little blurred, as if she was admiring Gu Nan's foresight. Gu Nan leisurely smiled and indifferently said, "Let's do it. There are no shortcuts on the last day. Use all the resources that can be used. We can only rely on ourselves." Danny was already dead, and Luo Xing was basically out of combat power, so he was resting in the town. Gu Nan and Lu Zhanyu were the only ones left. Fortunately, the strength of the final wave of evil demons was not much stronger than the previous wave. In fact, it was even weaker than the fourth wave. White Dew Guardian was only a level 2 instance dungeon. It was impossible for a level 3 instance dungeon to appear. Thus, they could only play some tactical tricks. In the beginning, they used up the players' tools and the number of NPC townspeople. The designers wanted to gradually nibble away at the players' cards. As for the final wave of attacks, they took into account the players' inertia and wanted to catch them off guard. Once the evil demons broke through the town walls, they would have to fight in the street. The difficulty of the instance dungeon would soar. The evil demons were much stronger than the NPCs in a one-on-one fight. However, against a player like Gu Nan, these methods were useless. At present, not only did they have more than half of the resources left, the town's militia also had combat strength. The night raid did not work either. Even if there were only 2 players left, it would not be difficult to defend the town. As the number of evil demons dwindled, the final boss appeared. However, it ate the final weakening scroll and fell under the siege of the townspeople. With that, the instance dungeon came to an end. In gaming terms, this was basically the CG stage. All the players needed to do was to watch the show. Gu Nan, after we return to the astral plane, make sure to keep in touch. Land Marigold giggled in a girlish tone. Can we do the next quest together? Sure. Gu Nan readily agreed. It's a pleasure working with you. By the way, did you kill Luo Xing? Kill. Land Marigold blurted out. Then, she froze. She forced a smile and asked, What are you talking about? There was a sincere smile on Gu Nan's face. I mean, did you kill Luo Xing before you left? Since you've already killed Danny, he won't make a difference. The smile on Land Marigold's face gradually faded, and she remained silent. By the way, considering how cautious you are, you should have gotten rid of his corpse, right? Gu Nan continued to speak to himself. If I had completed the quest and wanted to go back to check on him, I wouldn't be able to explain myself if I found his corpse. Gu Nan's voice slowly echoed in the room. Land Marigold finally smiled again. However, this time, her smile was very calm. Her face was as cold as it had been when she first arrived. Anger, admiration, anticipation, all these emotions had disappeared without a trace. How did you find out? She was purely curious. You asked me something, Gu Nan replied calmly. You asked me if I should use the final weakening scroll. Land Marigold frowned and pondered for a moment. Then, she guessed. You think it's a waste of resources, so you suspect that I'm an enemy? No, there are no enemies for this quest. Gu Nan's tone was very certain. I just feel that someone who simply wants to complete the quest wouldn't ask such a question. You should understand. You just need to believe me. So, why ask so many questions? Later, you came to me and said that you were going to kill Danny. At that time, I understood. Gu Nan stared into the girl's eyes. You were testing me, testing whether I had enough confidence. Land Marigold showed a self-deprecating expression. So, I lost to your narcissism. You even doubted other people's questions. Gu Nan shrugged and indicated that he had no comment on this. So what exactly is the reason you killed them? You don't know. This time, it was Land Marigold's turn to be surprised. The reward given by the astral world for the group quest is fixed. The fewer the people in the group, the more the reward. In other words, the fewer the people who survive, the more the reward. Gu Nan suddenly understood and gave her a thumbs up. Women are indeed the most vicious. Land Marigold's mouth twitched. She was speechless at Gu Nan's praise. So, are you going to kill me now? Land Marigold raised her head and looked at Gu Nan. She pointed at herself. Kill this vicious woman and enjoy the reward alone. Of course not. Gu Nan refused without hesitation. As I said, we had a good time working together. We can still team up in the future. I'll be responsible for completing the quest. You'll be responsible for tricking your teammates. Chapter 37. Dungeon Main Quest Completed. Main Quest Evaluation. B. Side Quest Development Rate. D. Map Exploration Rate. C. Crime Rating. B. Overall evaluation. B. Accumulated points, 100. Accumulated crime points. 3. When Gu Nan returned to the astral realm, the notification in the evil god's shrine gradually appeared. Although there were some accidents in the Protect the White Dew quest, Gu Nan was still satisfied. Not only did he successfully obtain the reward, but he also got to know a reliable partner. That's right, even if Land Marigold's actions were not right, betraying her teammates for the sake of the reward, Gu Nan did not mind. To put it bluntly, he had seen even more immoral and ridiculous things in the game in his previous life. Most of the players in the Evil God game had no morals, so this kind of thing was all too common. If a few players cooperated sincerely in a dungeon, then either there was no benefit in betraying one's teammates, or the quest was too difficult and they could not afford to lose even one person. As for whether Land Marigold would betray him or not, Gu Nan was not afraid. He was always on guard against everyone around him, not one more. Most importantly, he was about to advance to Tier 3. There was no way he would be afraid that Land Marigold would resist him. After receiving the mission reward, Gu Nan had 1,010 game points and 51 sin points, which was just enough for him to advance to the next level. After entering the evil god's shrine, Gu Nan sat quietly on the evil god's throne for a while, allowing his emotions to gradually calm down, before giving the order. Advancement. Exchange item. Evil God Advancement. Currently a Tier 2 Evil God. Advancement cost. 1,000 points. Crime point requirement. 50. Requirements met. Advancement begins. About to advance to Tier 3 Evil God, please choose your core skill. Shadow. Choosing his core skill, Gu Nan naturally chose the path that he was most familiar with in his previous life, Shadow. Shadow, or the Law of Shadow, was one of the highest level laws in the game. It was an existence of two sides to the Law of Light, and it was ranked first among the core skills. Of course, the higher the level of a skill, the higher the skill's control. A pro player like Gu Nan was not worried about this. As an inexplicable force entered his body, Gu Nan felt as if he was in an infinite void, and a force was approaching from afar, slowly devouring the entire night sky. This is the power of shadows? Endless comprehension surged into Gu Nan's mind, giving him a splitting headache. After all, reality wasn't a game. His body could be strengthened, but when Gu Nan began to enter the transcendent phase, he couldn't grasp the so-called natal techniques out of thin air. Unless he could comprehend all of this, his strength would not be able to keep up with his realm. Of course, this was not difficult for Gu Nan. For a high-end player like him, his comprehension was already top-notch, and his understanding of the shadow element was also far beyond a normal person's. He knew every single usage of the shadow element like the back of his hand. All he lacked was the theory behind it, and those insights from the evil divine palace had helped him understand everything. From now on, even without the evil divine palace, Gu Nan might still be able to comprehend the law of shadow on his own. In the empty palace, Gu Nan stood alone at the center. The dark shadow gradually spread from his feet until it covered the entire palace. At a certain moment, the shadow suddenly slowed down. In Gu Nan's consciousness, a certain force from far away seemed to have somehow descended on him, trying to stop him from making a breakthrough. However, the force was too weak. It disappeared in the blink of an eye after being washed away by the law of shadow at the origin level. Is this karma? I left it in the Langu world, but I didn't expect it to be so useless. Gu Nan washed away the force and shook his head. After a long time, Gu Nan slowly opened his eyes. The shadow under his feet suddenly expanded and then disappeared. Shadow body. He stretched out his right hand and clenched it. A pitch-black longsword gradually formed. The sword was thin and long, and it flickered with a faint black glow. The familiar touch made Gu Nan smile. He held his sword and stabbed it lightly, causing a strange ripple to reverberate. After successfully advancing to rank 3, Not only did his body toughen up to an unprecedented level, but he also truly obtained the core skill, shadow power. According to the cultivation theory of the cosmic realm, going from innate to transcendent was a process of soul transformation. Although the theory of the evil god's advancement was different, the final result was similar. Gu Nan's soul was also greatly strengthened, and the power of his skills had reached rank 3. It was no longer the castrated version that relied on equipment. More importantly, because of the effect of the shadow earring, his shadow power was actually rank 2. As a core skill, shadow power had the open skill hidden shadow at rank 1 and shadow body at rank 2. Shadow body was used to control shadows to create things. Not only could it create a weapon that was extremely convenient and could change at any time, but it could also transform into armor for defense. At the highest level, it could even create a humanoid clone. Shadow was worthy of being one of the top core skills. Not only was it powerful, but it was also ridiculously difficult to use. Ordinary players would need at least 3 to 5 years of practice to create a clone. Of course, this was not a difficult task for Gu Nan. After practicing shadow body, Gu Nan's consciousness returned to his body. The next step is to go to the immortal and demon world. With my current strength, hunting transcendent is no longer difficult, and I can also earn a wave of sin points and point. Gu Nan was thinking about his next move. Although he had advanced to rank 3 and had 50 sin points, it was still not enough. The next 3 points were 100, 200, and 300. 3 normal skill bars would be opened, and he could buy normal skills. Core skills would also be upgraded. If he wanted to advance to rank 4, he would need a total of 500 sin points. The number of points needed was even more astronomical, and Gu Nan had to free up some points to buy some rank 3 equipment. For example, the Observer's eyepiece and even the 4 Origin crossbow could already be used up, and they were just waiting for Gu Nan to buy better replacements. But before that, I have to make a trip to the Samsara Club. Gu Nan did not forget that he had accepted the job of fighting coach, so he could buy enough star iron and get in touch with the astral gate. There were many strong people in the astral world, and Gu Nan did not have the capital to do whatever he wanted, so he had to abide by the rules here. Just as Gu Nan was planning to go to the immortal and demon world, outside the Blue Dragon Hall headquarters, which was Yen Xiaoxiao's manor, 2 people secretly arrived. "Master, this is the new headquarters of the Blue Dragon Hall." A strong young man stood beside a white-haired, middle-aged man and bowed. Changing 5 headquarters in 3 days, this Blue Dragon Hall's hall master is a cautious person, the white-haired man said softly with an interested smile. He then turned to the young man and said, "The murderer who killed your martial uncle Han might be inside. Don't you want to avenge him?" The young man Du Mian's face instantly became ferocious, but he quickly calmed down and said, "I am no match for that person, so I need to ask Master to help me. Otherwise, I might never catch up to him." "Ha ha ha ha." The white-haired man laughed heartily and patted Du Mian's shoulder. "Not bad. Knowing when to yield, this is the way to achieve great things," the white-haired man said meaningfully. "If you don't admit defeat, you will always lose. I am very happy that you can learn to retreat." Du Mian heard this and was silent for a long time. Finally, he let out a long sigh and said, "Master, please kill this person. There is no hurry." The white-haired man waved his hand lightly and said, "The son of a rich family should not sit under the eaves. The person has not appeared yet, so why should we expose ourselves?" Chapter 38. When Gu Nan arrived at the Samsara Club, he unexpectedly met an acquaintance. "Gu Nan, you're here." Wang Lizzie looked at him in surprise. "Miss Su hasn't arrived yet. Many people in the club want to get to know you. Do you want to do me the honor?" "Sure." Gu Nan didn't mind. He was just unscrupulous sometimes. It wasn't like he was autistic. Why couldn't he get to know some people? After all, there weren't many students today. The public training room was a bit deserted. However, Gu Nan's arrival made it lively. Coach Gu. Coach Gu, I've wanted to get to know you for a long time. Thank you so much, Coach Gu. You're practically our savior. A circle of well-built combat instructors surrounded Gu Nan and took turns to shake hands with him. Each and every one of them looked so grateful that they were on the verge of tears. Gu Nan couldn't help but be speechless. It seemed that Su Fian had indeed tormented them quite a bit. After thanking him, most of the coaches went to do their own things. A few stayed behind to ask Gu Nan for advice. They were also very humble. After all, he was someone who had subdued Su Fian, who dared to be presumptuous. Gu Nan also gave them some pointers. With his level and knowledge, even if he didn't have any strength, it was enough to guide these coaches. Of course, no one present could tell that Gu Nan had already advanced to the transcendent level. Otherwise, no one would dare to mention the word guidance. Miss Su is here. Someone shouted. Gu Nan turned around and saw that Su Fian had indeed arrived. Su Fian was still in the loose sportswear. Together with her cold and delicate face, she really did have the charm of an iceberg beauty. Coach Gu. Gu Nan nodded lightly. Have you prepared everything I want? Before Su Fian could speak, the young man who came with her said, The weights, equipment you want are all here. However, I warn you, if you speak carelessly, you will taste the consequences. Su Fian glanced at the young man speechlessly. The young man was her brother, Su Sun. When he heard about her encounter yesterday, he determined that the other party was a swindler and insisted on coming over to take a look. And that was exactly what Su Sun thought. In his opinion, this Gu Nan had obviously heard a rumor from somewhere and knew that his sister had an unmentionable illness. That was why he was looking for an opportunity to swindle others. He might even have the thought of a toad lusting after swan meat. Su Sun's words were meant to provoke him. As long as the other party angrily asked, Who are you? Or something along those lines, he could reveal his identity and teach the brat a lesson. Furthermore, the brat couldn't talk back. Unfortunately, even though he had a good idea, Gu Nan didn't even look at him and only spoke indifferently. Okay, come with me. You know fist techniques, right? Show me a set of punches first. Gu Nan came to the training room. He didn't start the treatment immediately. Instead, this was the first thing he said. Okay. Su Fian nodded lightly. You. Su Sun wanted to say something, but was glared at by Su Fian. He could only sit to the side and sulk. Su Fian obediently demonstrated a set of punches. During this process, Gu Nan's eyes were always wandering between her legs, judging the incongruity between them. This scene fell into Su Sun's eyes, and he was even more certain that Gu Nan must have bad intentions. If he could see the problem with his eyes, why would he need so much equipment? Okay, stop. Gu Nan opened his mouth and handed over a leg ring. Hang it on your left leg, 3 centimeters below the knee. Do it again. Su Fian did as she was told, but just as she was about to finish, she heard Gu Nan say again, too low. She had to lift it up a little more. Too high. Go down a little more. Too high. Okay, that's it. Su Fian's expression was a little strange. On the other side, Su Sun couldn't bear it anymore. He angrily took a tape measure and ran over, saying, Do you think your eyes are a ruler? You said 3 centimeters. His words were stuck in the middle of his sentence, because when he measured with the tape measure, the position of the leg ring was exactly 3 centimeters away from the knee. Gu Nan continued to be expressionless. Precise control of the distance was a necessary quality for a professional player. Okay, brother, you just watch from the side. Su Fian was still full of confidence in Gu Nan. She pressed Su Sun to the side and said. Su Sun rolled his eyes. A grown girl can't be kept at home. Su Fian didn't bicker with him and continued to practice as usual. After watching for a while, Gu Nan asked her to change the leg ring. Change this leg ring, still in the old position. Hang this one too, lower by 0.5 centimeter. Change the one that's lower. After adjusting for nearly an hour, Su Fian began to pant slightly. She had 3 leg rings on her left leg and 1 on her right leg. At this time, Gu Nan was finally satisfied and said, "Okay. Fix these 4 leg rings and practice that set of boxing 5 times a day. You can take them off in a week." Su Sun, who was watching from the side, yawned. Seeing Gu Nan suddenly stop, he couldn't help but blurt out, "That's it?" Gu Nan ignored him. After saying goodbye to Su Fian, he walked straight to the door. "Wait a minute, Coach Gu." Su Fian saw him turn around and was about to leave, so she hurriedly stopped him. "What's the matter? After my leg problem is solved, will you continue to be my personal coach?" Gu Nan thought for a moment. The source of star gold still needed to be solved, so he nodded and said, "Yes, but I won't come often. At least for the next week or so, I won't be free." "Sister, do you really believe that guy's words?" Su Sun watched his sister carefully lift up her trouser leg and install the leg ring on her leg. He suddenly became angry. That Gu Nan's actions, in his eyes, were completely deceiving. He inexplicably let his sister practice boxing for an hour and wear a few leg rings, and that was it? If it was so simple, his father would have cured his sister long ago. Su Fian didn't refute, but calmly said, "In any case, whether it's true or not, won't we know in a week?" Immortal Demon World, in the manor of Blue Dragon Hall headquarters, there was already a battle cry. Countless strong enemies were looking around, and even Bai Luoluo was forced to fight a bloody battle. Fortunately, after this period of time of training by Yen Xiaoxiao, she was no longer the rookie she used to be. She didn't hesitate to kill people, and with a swing of her sword, a life was taken. "Little Bai, let's go." Yen Xiaoxiao slashed an enemy with her sword and brought Bai Luoluo to the front of a secret passage. "Quickly go, I'll be right there." "Little miss, you also come with us." Bai Luoluo saw that Yen Xiaoxiao still wanted to turn back, and couldn't help but say. Yen Xiaoxiao ignored her, clenched her teeth, and walked to the side of the secret passage. With a light push of her hand, a hidden dark room actually appeared on the wall. Bai Luoluo was startled. "This is Little Miss's room. How could there be a hidden dark room? What is Little Miss hiding inside?" With the weak light, she seemed to be able to see clearly that there was a coffin inside. "Teacher, I'll take you away." Yen Xiaoxiao held up the coffin with both hands, clenched her teeth and said, "Inside is Little Mrs. Teacher? Had he already passed away?" Chapter 39. Gu Nan watched as the Demon King's figure gradually disappeared, but he did not chase after him. The Demon King's actual realm was still above his, but he had completely seen through his methods. But if Gu Nan wanted to make him stay, it would be more difficult. In any case, Ming Lu's people would take the lead in the future, so why would he need to fight the Demon King to the death now? In the future, waiting to be killed was the most important thing. Once the Demon King retreated, the remaining small fries of the Demon Dao could not do much. In a short while, they were all slaughtered by Gu Nan. Yen Xiaoxiao began to arrange for people to clean up the manor and rearrange the clothes that had been destroyed. "Teacher, was that the Demon King?" Yen Xiaoxiao came to Gu Nan's side and asked with some difficulty. Gu Nan and the Demonic King didn't hide anything when they fought. Moreover, the Demonic King's eye-catching appearance was easily recognized by others. "Not bad." Yen Xiaoxiao took a deep breath and cupped her hands. "Congratulations, teacher, for entering the Minute Subtlety realm as soon as you entered the Transcendent realm." The so-called Minute Subtlety referred to the 3 realms of the Transcendent realm. From the Transcendent realm to the Breaking realm, there were 3 realms in between: Mixed Essence, Minute Subtlety, and Eternal Domain. According to Gu Nan's understanding, it was the difference between the first, second, and third levels of his core skills. He had the Shadow Earring, and his core skills were already at the 2nd level, so he was not at a disadvantage against the Demon King, who was publicly acknowledged to be in the Minute Subtlety realm. That was why Yen Xiaoxiao thought so. "Not really." Gu Nan shook his head. I have only understood the minute's subtlety, but my own realm has not caught up yet. Yan Xiaoxiao almost rolled her eyes. The minute's subtlety is even more terrifying when the minute's subtlety surpasses the realm. But at this time, she suddenly fell silent. Gu Nan looked at her and said with a faint smile, "What? Do you think there is hope for revenge?" Yan Xiaoxiao still did not speak. Her usual sweet smile gradually disappeared, and what replaced it was the 7 slaughtered demons who had slaughtered everywhere. Gu Nan had a thorough understanding of Yan Xiaoxiao. This girl was a natural killer. The revenge of her family's annihilation made her grow up quickly, but it also made her walk the path of extreme and bigotry. Although she had temporarily let go of her hatred under his persuasion, it did not mean that she had forgotten about it. She had put away the sword that she had used all those years ago. Even in that life and death situation just now, she had not pulled out that sword, which meant that she was still restraining herself with all her might. She wanted to use this bone-deep hatred to nurture the sword in her heart. When the sword was unsheathed, it would be the day she achieved Tao. "Go get your revenge," Gu Nan said lightly. Yan Xiaoxiao looked at him in a daze. She thought that her teacher would advise her to be patient until the heart sword was completely formed. She didn't expect, "What's the point of practicing martial arts if you can't even take revenge?" Gu Nan rubbed her head and smiled. "Never forget what made you walk this path in the first place." As Gu Nan spoke, Yan Xiaoxiao felt like she had returned to that estate, that scene of blood splattering everywhere, that shudder that came from the depths of her soul. The battle at Blue Dragon Hall's headquarters had been surrounded by so many eyes that it was impossible to conceal the result. The Demon Lord had privately gone to the central and southern regions in an attempt to capture the rising faction of Blue Dragon Hall in one fell swoop, but he had been wounded and retreated. This sort of news was beginning to spread throughout the world. As the rumors spread, some places were already saying that the Demon Lord was heavily wounded and on the verge of death, that exterminating the demonic path was just around the corner. In the center of the continent, in Ming Lu's headquarters in this world, absurd, that Demon Lord was already a subtle realm expert, one of the strongest of the natives. How could he have been so easily wounded? An old man covered in wrinkles slammed his hand on the table, not believing the rumors in the slightest. Including him, a total of 11 people with different expressions were sitting around a large round table, discussing this matter. But this matter is indeed true. The Demon Lord retreated. A woman in green standing across from the old man said leisurely, "According to our intelligence, the person who fought with the Demon Lord was at least a subtle realm expert." The old man's expression was dark. He knew that he could not refute the ironclad evidence in front of him, so he asked, "Then tell me, where did this expert come from? Could it be that this world has secrets that our Ming Lu has not discovered?" The old man's last sentence caused everyone's expressions to turn serious. Ming Lu had prepared for this plane for so long, it was not just to complete a mission. Once they had dealt with the enemy reincarnated, this place could become Ming Lu's resource plane, steadily transporting all sorts of resources and talents. If this world still had secrets, or even hidden factions, then that was something they truly needed to pay attention to. Everyone. Just as everyone was deep in thought, one of the women said, "I think I have a rough idea of who that person is." "What? Is that true? Tang Xian, did you obtain intelligence from other sources? Is it reliable?" A series of questions rang out. Tang Xian smiled bitterly. She gently pushed the information in her hands forward. "I don't know if you still remember, but there was a genius in our branch in the past." As she spoke, the information in her hands was distributed to everyone. When they finished reading Tang Xian's information, all the transcendents frowned. What Tang Xian showed them was the conflict between Gu Nan and Yan Xiaoxiao. Back then, Gu Nan had given Yan Xiaoxiao pointers. This was no secret in the eyes of those who were observant. Even the Demon Lord could find out, let alone Ming Lu. And Yan Xiaoxiao was the 7 slaughtered demoness, as well as the hallmaster of Blue Dragon Hall. This was even more obvious. In that case, it should be this Gu Nan who has advanced to transcendence. A young man with sword-like eyebrows shook his head with a bitter smile. Back then, I had high hopes for his advancement. I didn't expect it to happen so quickly. This young man was Yu Qinxing, who had been stationed in the south. He had seen Gu Nan's shocking achievements back then and admired him very much. It's a pity that he's not one of us anymore. Another person sighed softly. Otherwise, our mission this time would be much easier. Everyone else sighed helplessly. Even among the people present, more than half of them were only at the first stage of transcendence, the chaotic prime. If a refinement realm expert suddenly appeared, their combat power would immediately increase by a large margin. Ming Lu was not allowed to stay or leave, so no one could say anything about Gu Nan's departure. They could only sigh that he had left at the wrong time. Just as the meeting fell into silence, an elegant middle-aged man at the head of the table knocked on the table and spoke. Even if Gu Nan is no longer one of us, it's not impossible to pull him over. The middle-aged man's expression was calm, as if nothing could move him. The fact that he fought with the Demon Lord proves a lot of things. Everyone's eyes lit up. They felt sorry for the loss of talent as they had not thought of this. Even if he was not a companion, he could still be a comrade. Chapter 40. Just as the higher-ups of Ming Lu decided to bring forward the final battle due to the battle between Gu Nan and the Demon Monarch, a shadow quietly arrived in the south. Sister Jiechi, this is today's information. A short-haired and capable young man walked over and placed a stack of documents in front of Mo Jiechi's table. Okay, I got it. Mo Jiechi nodded and smiled at the young man. Thank you, Zhao Mu. The young man called Zhao Mu seemed a bit bashful. He revealed a shy expression and said hurriedly, Sister Jiechi, you have to rest well too. Mo Jiechi was startled. Recently, the battle between the righteous and evil paths had been in full swing. She had been extremely busy and hadn't had a good rest in a long time. Thus, she smiled again and patted Zhao Mu's arm. All right, after dealing with today's batch, I'll go have a good sleep. Seeing that his advice was effective, Zhao Mu nodded excitedly. A strange feeling gradually surfaced in his heart. Sister Jiechi actually listened to my advice. It's useless for others to advise her. Just as Zhao Mu's heart was surging, his gaze on Mo Jiechi gradually froze. This was because he saw a black shadow slowly creeping up the table leg. The black shadow seemed slow but was actually very fast. Before Zhao Mu could react, it had climbed up Mo Jiechi's neck in the blink of an eye. Mo Jiechi seemed to be completely unaware of this. Before Zhao Mu could finish saying be careful, he saw a scene that made him dumbfounded. The black shadow actually lightly made a circle around Mo Jiechi's neck. Then, the latter's head fell off just like that. Jia. Sister Jiechi. Zhao Mu was completely dumbfounded. He had never seen such a terrifying scene before. At this time, Gu Nan's figure gradually appeared. He saw that there was someone standing beside him. Huh? You're also from Ming Lu? Only then did Zhao Mu react. He flew into a rage. You actually killed Sister Jiechi. I'm going to avenge her. As he spoke, he had already pounced forward. Bang! Gu Nan directly sent him flying with a palm strike. This palm landed on his face and completely deformed his face. Naturally, his life was in danger. Idiot! Don't you know that dying in the plane only means that the later can't enter? An hour later, the manor of the Ming Lu branch was engulfed in flames. Not a single person was left alive. All the materials, files, and documents were burned to ashes. Gu Nan swept his clothes and left not a single trace. He wanted to kill Mo Jiechi because he had used Mo Jiechi to annihilate Yan Xiaoxiao's entire family. As long as Mo Jiechi was still in this world, this matter could be used by the people of Minglu to sow discord between him and Yan Xiaoxiao. Killing Mo Jiechi was equivalent to destroying the evidence. Even if Tang Xian knew about this, she had no evidence, so it was useless to rely on words alone. Yulan Yu Lu Gu Xian. Actually, Gu Nan was not trying to get anything from Yan Xiaoxiao at the moment. At most, he needed someone to help him manage his forces. During the battle between the righteous and evil paths, Gu Nan needed a pair of eyes to gather information for him and search for hunting targets. After the war, even if Yan Xiaoxiao found out the truth, it wouldn't affect Gu Nan. While Gu Nan was cleaning up Mo Jiechi, the immortal and demon world finally welcomed a big change. The war, which had lasted for 9 months, was finally about to enter its final phase. The battle between the Transcendence and Demon world was about to begin. On the 15th day of the 9th month, the heavenly fire sex Taoist Yuli appeared. He used the heavenly fire to burn down the demon path's 70,000-strong army. On the 17th day of the 9th month, Taoist Yuli appeared. He was attacked by 3 transcendents from the demon path and was seriously injured. On the 21st day of the 9th month, the demon path's experts were ambushed. They suffered heavy losses. On the 25th day of the 9th month, the Pure Land Bodhisattva of the Joyous Union sect fell. On the 29th day, once the Transcendent War began, both sides didn't hold back. Experts from both sides threw themselves into the battlefield. In a short month, nearly 10 Transcendents had fallen. This number was the total accumulated strength of both the righteous and demon paths over hundreds of years. And on the battlefield that ordinary people couldn't see, the number of Transcendents who died was even greater. Even those famous native experts had mostly died at their hands. In a dense forest in the northern part of the continent, a team was hurrying forward. They arrived in front of a hidden valley. Hall Master, ahead is the last stronghold of the Yinhua Tree Gate. Their holy son, holy daughter, and the last sect protector elder are all inside. A man in black bowed and reported. The person he was reporting to was a young girl dressed in bright yellow. Do it. The young girl's face was expressionless. This young girl was, of course, Yan Xiaoxiao. According to intelligence, the Yinhua Tree Gate was the one who had ambushed the Yan family and caused the massacre. Ever since the battle between Gu Nan and the Demon Lord, Yan Xiaoxiao had embarked on the path of annihilating the Yinhua Tree Gate. She led the Blue Dragon Hall team and conquered thousands of li in a month, destroying more than 30 strongholds of the Yinhua Tree Gate. She had forcefully beaten such a medium-sized sect to the point where only a few kittens and puppies were left. Yan Xiaoxiao's growth was too fast. Half a year ago, she was just a little girl who knew some martial arts. When Gu Nan came to rescue her, she was already able to contend with a 6th-level innate stage practitioner. But now, Yan Xiaoxiao no longer cared about innate stage practitioners. After all, she had followed a teacher who had crushed those of the same level since the innate stage, and dared to kill transcendence at the peak of the innate stage. Her horizons had long been raised. The 3 6th-level innate stage practitioners of the Yinhua Tree Gate had all been killed by her. All the direct relatives of the Yinhua Tree Gate's master had also been bled by her, drained dry corpses, and then beheaded as a sacrifice. And now there was finally only one stronghold left. The holy son and holy daughter of the Yinhua Tree Gate were the last descendants of this sect. As long as they were killed, the Yinhua Tree Gate's roots would be severed, and it would be completely erased from the mainland. And with the endorsement of the battle between Gu Nan and the Demon Lord, Yan Xiaoxiao would go out under the banner of Blue Dragon Hall. No transcendents would dare to casually interfere. The members of the Blue Dragon Hall quickly obeyed the order and left. Instead, Yan Xiaoxiao stood outside the stronghold, silent for a long time. "Little miss?" Bai Luoluo looked at her with some confusion. "Little Bai, tell me, after I take my revenge, what else can I do?" Yan Xiaoxiao's voice sounded somewhat melancholic, and she even began to hesitate. Bai Luoluo tilted her head and thought for a moment. "Little miss, you can accept more people into our Blue Dragon Hall. We want to develop Blue Dragon Hall into the world's largest organization." As she said this, Bailuolua's eyes lit up. She even added in her heart, "When the time comes, let's see who dares to bully us." Yan Xiaoxiao laughed involuntarily and reached out to touch the back of the little loli's head. "The world's strongest organization? I wanted to, but—" Yan Xiaoxiao thought of the past again. She thought of Mo Jiechi, and also the day she brought her to see Gunan. Chapter 41. Everything happened too quickly. Before Yu Qinxing and Tang Xian could react, Yi Jiu had already fallen to the ground. What they didn't expect was that Gunan had appeared out of nowhere and was stepping on Yi Jiu's head. He had a faint smile on his face as he said condescendingly, "What would you do if I didn't listen to you?" "Gunan, you." Tang Xian looked at Gunan, who had suddenly appeared, and was speechless for a moment. The current Gunan was too different from her impression of him. Ever since Gunan left, Tang Xian hadn't really met him. Therefore, the impression he gave her was that he was a junior who had some talent but wasn't very strong. The young man before her was wearing a white robe with gold inlaid on it. His black hair was scattered casually and his gaze was cold. He was like a sharp arrow that had been unsheathed. The sharpness made people not dare to look at him directly. Is this the real him? Tang Xian suddenly thought of Gunan's calm expression when she brought him to test his aptitude. Putting aside Tang Xian's complicated emotions, Yi Jiu finally came back to her senses. She was instantly enraged. "Gunan, you're courting death." An intense flame wave rose up and Yi Jiu's body started to emit red light. This red light had a terrifying temperature, and even the air was distorted from the heat. This was Yi Jiu's innate mystical ability, flame ripples. If she was given enough time, she would be able to release extremely high-temperature flame rays. Every single one of them would be fatal and impossible to defend against. It was an extremely powerful mystical ability. Child's play. Gunan chuckled, and the shadow on the ground quickly covered Yi Jiu. Countless black threads shot out and each of them collided with the ripple. Therefore, the flame ripple was extinguished at a speed visible to the naked eye until Yi Jiu's entire body was black. There was no longer any red light. It's really the nuance realm. And this is the Shadow Divine ability. As the only nuance realm extraordinary powerhouse among the three, Yu Qinxing could see through Gunan's abilities at a glance. He was indescribably shocked. Nuance referred to a cultivator having perfect control over their divine ability. The power could be big or small, and they could control it freely. It was just like how when Zhangfeng had been able to use air explosions to blast people and also use air pressure to lift himself up. Gunan's perfect countermeasure was an extremely difficult technique even in the minute subtlety realm. Yi Jiu, who was stepped on by Gunan, was similarly shocked to the point of being dumbstruck at this moment. She'd never imagined that her divine ability would be destroyed in such a way. Her flame ripples had always been famous for their high attack power. It would have been fine if it had been dodged, but her opponent had used his own divine ability to forcefully suppress her. This feeling of powerlessness made Yi Jiu feel suffocated. Gunan didn't kill Yi Jiu in the end. Under the persuasion of Yu Qinxing and Tang Xian, he let Yi Jiu go. Yi Jiu did not have the face to stay any longer. She turned around and left without saying a word. "It's fine. I'll inform her to take action later." Yu Qinxing wasn't worried about this. Instead, he looked at Gunan and said, "I still have to thank Brother Gu for showing mercy." Gunan waved his hand with a friendly expression. "I've never liked to kill people." Yu Qinxing and Tang Xian's mouths twitched. They knew about Gunan's past achievements. Gunan didn't feel anything about this. He had always felt that he was a normal person. He only killed people to get rewards. Why would he kill people if there were no benefits? For example, if Tang Xian hadn't said that the monk had joined the demon Dao, he wouldn't have come to kill that monk. According to the organization's intelligence, Monk Jingnan is a very famous solo reincarnator. He lives in the 6-star sector, and rarely interferes with the missions of large organizations. I don't know what emotion used to move him this time. After being here for a few years, Ming Lu had obviously found out about the Reincarnata organization on the other side. Samotion was a Reincarnata organization that had only flourished in the past few decades. They were mainly active in the 6-star sector. It wasn't strange for them to be able to contact monk Jing Nan. What level is Jing Nan at? Gu Nan asked this crucial question. He's at least at the nuance realm. Some people say that he has already formed his domain core. It's only a matter of time before he reaches the eternal domain realm, Yu Qinxing said in a deep voice. Gu Nan couldn't help but roll his eyes. Just the 4 of us are going to kill such an opponent? Alright, go home, wash up, and sleep. Of course it's not that simple. Listen to us first, Tang Xian interrupted. We dared to attack Jing Nan because he's already seriously injured. After listening to Yu Qinxing's explanation, Gu Nan finally understood where their confidence came from. Jing Nan had nothing to do with this world mission and had no intention of helping Samotion. Their relationship was more like cooperation. Samotion provided information, while Jing Nan came for another mission. The seriously injured Jing Nan's realm was at most the same, but his strength was almost at the primordial chaos realm. This way, it was indeed not impossible for them to keep the other party here with their lineup of 2 nuance realm cultivators and 2 primordial chaos realm cultivators. Gu Nan somewhat understood what the 2 of them meant and said, "Is his mission related to the saint and saintess?" To be precise, it's related to a treasure of the demon Tao. Thank you for saving me, Master. The Yinhua Tree sect's saint's surname was Zhang. He and his sister were the last bloodline of the Yinhua Tree sect. Jing Nan had brought him out of the dense forest and fled all the way back to Luoyang City. Only then did he feel like he had a new lease on life. Amitabha, Buddha saves the world, so how can this penniless monk leave you in the lurch? Jing Nan pressed his palms together, his face still expressionless. The saint was still expressing his gratitude. The saintess beside him, who had not spoken all this while, suddenly said, "May I know why Master is here?" Jing Nan's gaze landed on the saintess and revealed a hint of approval. "May I ask for your name, young benefactor?" "I'm Zhang Yao. This is my elder brother, Zhang Tianxiu." Saintess Zhang Yao looked calmer than her elder brother. Her tone and expression did not show any signs of impatience. One could not tell that she had just experienced a life-and-death escape. Jing Nan nodded slightly. "This penniless monk is here for an item called the 9 Xian Fiend Disc." Fiend Disc. Zhang Tianxiu's expression brightened as he hurriedly said, "Master, I know this treasure. Its last master was a senior of the Yinhua Tree sect." "Benefactor, do you know where the Fiend Disc is?" Jing Nan revealed a smile. "I know. But that's a treasure of the demon Tao." Zhang Tianxiu was about to speak when he reacted midway. Why was this Buddhist master looking for a treasure of the demon Tao? The Fiend Disc is in Luoyang City. It was snatched by the Jin Nation's royal family many years ago, but they have no way of opening it. It must still be in the royal family's secret vault. Without waiting for Zhang Tianxiu to speak, Saintess Zhang Yuan revealed the location of the Fiend Disc without any hesitation. Zhang Tianxiu turned his head and looked at his sister in shock. A hint of helplessness flashed in his eyes. In his opinion, since this master had a request for the Fiend Disc, the 2 of them could use it as a price to ask this master to help them kill the 7 slaughtered demonists. Chapter 42. The Observer's eyepiece was a piece of equipment that had helped Gu Nan a lot, but it had never been of any decisive use. On Gu Nan's journey, most of his opponents were too weak. There was no need for him to deliberately seek out their weaknesses to kill them. As a result, the Observer's eyepiece didn't play its intended role. In fact, as the first piece of equipment that Gu Nan had purchased, the Observer's eyepiece had a very high status in the game. It was considered one of the necessary equipment for beginners. The current situation confirmed Gu Nan's foresight. If not for the observer's eyepiece, he really wouldn't have been able to find a good way to defeat his opponent in a short period of time. After putting on the eyepiece, the constant insight spell immediately took effect. Jing Nan's seemingly flawless tortoiseshell finally revealed some differences. This feeling was as though he was using some kind of ray to scan, allowing him to instantly find some weak points. Here. The corners of Gu Nan's mouth curled into a smile. He instantly leaned forward and punched Jing Nan's left shoulder. Jing Nan, who had his eyes closed the entire time, finally opened his eyes. He turned his body slightly and formed a palm with his left hand to meet Gu Nan's attack. However, Gu Nan's reaction was extremely fast. Almost as soon as Jing Nan moved, he turned his body and moved up like a swimming dragon. His target changed to the top of Jing Nan's head. Jing Nan's expression turned solemn. His right hand was still controlling the demonic compass, so he had no choice but to raise his left hand to meet his opponent. Gu Nan's punch landed and was firmly blocked by Monk Jing Nan's palm. However, the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. When Jing Nan saw this smile, his heart skipped a beat. At some point in time, a humanoid shadow had appeared beside him. It had perfectly replicated Gu Nan's previous punch. Target, left shoulder. There was no way to dodge. After the punch landed, the sound of something shattering sounded. Jing Nan took 3 steps back, and the golden light around him dimmed significantly. Gu Nan stood where he was as though he was taking a breather. As for the shadow body avatar, it transformed into a shadow and stood behind him. Shadow divine power. There's actually a doppelganger superpower. Seeing this, Yu Qinxing could not help but sigh softly, as expected of a divine ability that uses the law of light as one of the 2 sides. Monk Jing Nan's expression was solemn, and a hint of bitterness appeared on his face. He twirled the prayer beads in his left hand and said, "Umitba, tua your ass, die." In a flash, Gu Nan turned into a shadow that was hard to see with the naked eye. He quickly moved around Jing Nan, throwing dozens of punches every second. He displayed his speed to the extreme, occasionally mixing in a couple of real moves among the countless feints. Coupled with the shadow body doppelganger, Jing Nan was suffering unspeakably. Tang Xian, Yi Jiu, and Yu Qinxing had long stopped fighting because Jing Nan seemed to be surrounded by 2 black shadows. They were unable to interfere in such a battle. Yi Jiu suddenly had a feeling that she couldn't speak. Even though she knew that Gu Nan was strong, maybe even stronger than her, but this, the Transcendence realm, was a huge stage. Even in the same realm, the difference in strength could be like heaven and earth. For an expert like Jing Nan, who stood at the peak of minute subtlety, had divine powers surrounding him, and could attain a domain at any time, he was actually beaten to the point of being unable to retaliate. What they did not know was that Jing Nan's situation was worse than they had imagined. Gu Nan's body was too strong and his speed was too fast. Once he found a weakness, he would unleash a flurry of attacks. As for Jing Nan, he had to deal with such attacks while controlling the fiend board. How could he defend flawlessly? In just a few seconds, Jing Nan's turtle shell shattered with a loud bang. He hurriedly pushed back Gu Nan and the shadow body with a palm strike and jumped out of the encirclement. "Benefactor, please listen to this penniless monk. Die." Gu Nan pounced forward again. "Benefactor, die." Gu Nan and the shadow body were like 2 mad dogs. They relied on their thick skin and thick flesh to beat Jing Nan's head, not giving him a chance to speak. The corners of Jing Nan's mouth twitched. Without the protective golden light, how could he block Gu Nan? He struggled left and right for a long time. In the end, his face was punched several times. Half of his face, which was originally delicate and pretty, suddenly swelled up. If he wanted to suppress the fiend board, Jing Nan would not be able to move quickly. Therefore, facing such a situation, he could only sigh softly and throw the fiend board out. Yu Qinxing rose and landed, grabbing the fiend board in his hand. At the same time, he sighed. "You're quite decisive. If you don't stop, you might really die." Gu Nan, come back. Yu Qinxing, who was grabbing the 9 black fiend board, nearly widened his eyes. Gu Nan did not even look over. The shadow body circled behind him, and formed an encirclement again. Jing Nan, who had just heaved a sigh of relief, was beaten up again. Benefactor. Don't go too far. Monk Jing Nan was really infuriated, but Gu Nan didn't care. He didn't care what Monk Jing Nan said. He only cared about hitting himself. This was a habit that Gu Nan had developed in the online game era. Instance dungeon bosses would always spout nonsense. They had their own shields and would not be affected. This was a necessary quality for an expert player. Jing Nan's face was a little dark. Even Yu Qinxing and the other 2 were the same. In their opinion, since they had the fiend board in their hands, why should they fight Monk Jing Nan? It would not be worth it to push this expert to the other side for no reason. Of course, they did not know that in Gu Nan's eyes, the big baldy, Jing Nan, had long become a pile of sin points and points. Bang! Another punch landed on Jing Nan's nose, and 2 lines of blood appeared on his face. The monk finally could not hold on any longer and began to turn around to escape. However, with Gu Nan's speed, how could he escape? He took the initiative to open up a distance, giving Gu Nan a chance to kite him. The shadow bodies fought while the main body harassed from behind with a crossbow. Jing Nan suddenly felt that this was even more hopeless than being surrounded. 6 hours later, the pitiful monk Jing Nan was finally tortured to death. He did not manage to leave Luoyang City even when he died. Gu Nan accepted the 3 sin points and 150 points in satisfaction. It seemed that the stronger the boss was, the more points it gave. Where's the fiend board? Gu Nan returned to the 3 of them and asked bluntly. Yu Qinxing quickly handed the fiend board to him, and Gu Nan accepted it. Wait! Seeing that Yu Qinxing had handed over the fiend board just like that, Yi Jiu hurriedly stopped him. There's only one spoil of war. Why should you take it for yourself? Yu Qinxing could not help but roll his eyes. He thought to himself, what's the use of this thing? We might as well give it to this guy. However, before he could speak, Yi Jiu said, no one who cooperates with Ming Lu can take all the spoils of war for themselves. This time, she had learned her lesson and used the entire Ming Lu as her backing. In her opinion, no matter how powerful Gu Nan was, he would not dare to go against Ming Lu. However, smack! Gu Nan casually slapped her and sent her flying. Then, he spat in disdain. Chapter 43. After the Battle of Luoyang City, Gu Nan's life returned to peace. He stayed in the manor every day. There were people serving him when he went in and out, and there were also people delivering information about extraordinaires. All he needed to do was go out and harvest sin points. But just as he was enjoying his comfortable life, the immortal demon world was in turmoil. Ming Lu's years of preparation had finally paid off. The moment they launched their attack, it was as fast as lightning. With Gu Nan's interference, the elites of the 6 evil paths fell one after another. Very few of them were able to fight back. In terms of foundation, professionalism, and control over the natives, the Samoyed sect couldn't compare to Ming Lu in any aspect. Their defeat was already set in stone. As time passed, the righteous sects won one battle after another. Although some transcendents died, it didn't affect the overall situation. Another month passed, more than half of the evil path sects were wiped out. Sects of all sizes suffered countless casualties. Even the leading 6 sects were scattered. In the propaganda of the righteous sects, the evil path sects were like stray dogs, fleeing in panic, waiting for the righteous cultivators to surround and kill them. Teacher, there's a letter for you. Gu Nan sat alone at the side, sipping his tea and reading the frontline battle report. Yan Xiaoxiao suddenly rushed in and said, "Oh!" Gu Nan raised his eyebrows slightly, showing some curiosity on his face. Ming Lu hadn't sent him a letter for a long time. It seemed that the unceremonious scolding of Yi Jiu still had some effect. Of course, this was also because of the situation. Ever since the battle at Jingnan, Gu Nan's reputation had spread to both sides. It wasn't easy to secretly attack him anymore. On the other hand, when Transcendents started to flee, it wasn't easy to catch them. Even if they could catch up, they wouldn't be able to wait for Gu Nan. So Gu Nan didn't force it. He waited for the main mission to be completed and received a considerable reward. At this critical moment, Ming Lu sent him a letter. What was it about? When Gu Nan opened the letter and read it, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. His laughter made Yan Xiaoxiao, who was beside him, curious. Gu Nan noticed her expression and handed the letter over to her. Take a look. Without the slightest hesitation, Yan Xiaoxiao quickly read through the contents, then exclaimed, "The demon lord has already been captured alive? Are they going to hold a ceremony?" The content of the letter, however, informed Gu Nan that the demon monarch had been captured, and the people of the righteous faction wanted to behead the demon monarch in the righteous faction's ceremony 3 days later as a sacrifice to the ancestors. At the end of the letter, he invited Gu Nan to go with him. "Teacher, are you going?" "Of course. I'm not going." Gu Nan shook his head firmly. Yan Xiaoxiao didn't quite understand Gu Nan's thoughts. Now that the world was settled, the righteous path was in power. With master's strength, he naturally did not fear anyone. But participating in the righteous path's grand ceremony was also a way to establish his own position. As long as master went, he would definitely obtain the corresponding position and become famous overnight. As expected of master, he was not even tempted by such fame and fortune. Gu Nan wasn't as complicated as she thought. He patted her shoulder and said, "The holy son and holy maiden of Yinhua Tree Gate, have you found them?" "No." Yan Xiaoxiao shook her head calmly. "The war was too chaotic, we couldn't find any traces of them. Perhaps they have already died in the chaos." Speaking of this, Yan Xiaoxiao suddenly smiled. "Actually, teacher, I no longer care about the family feud from back then. It's best if you can think that way." Gu Nan nodded. "This world is very big. Strive to advance to the transcendence level as soon as possible." "Alright, do you want to know why I didn't go?" Yan Xiaoxiao couldn't quite accept his jumping train of thought. After being stunned for a while, she hurriedly shook her head. "They invited me to kill people, but I won't kill people without any benefit." "Kill people? The outcome has been decided. Who else do you want to kill?" Yan Xiaoxiao suddenly thought of something. She even felt that the remnants of the evil path still existed and would make a comeback. "Of course we're going to kill those of the righteous path," Gu Nan said matter-of-factly. "You don't think that we, the immortal diviners, are really just here to help, do you?" 3 days later, the righteous path's grand ceremony. Countless heroes of the righteous path gathered. After a long sacrificial ceremony, the heaven-seeking sect's leader personally cut off the head of the demonic king Wang Yutong, announcing the official end of the year-long battle between the righteous and evil paths. The disciples and followers of the various sects celebrated and cheered that the era of the righteous path was coming. However, extreme joy turned to sorrow. Countless unknown killers suddenly appeared and massacred the upper echelons of the righteous path. This battle only lasted for a few hours, but all the upper echelons of the 5 sects were killed. From then on, the righteous path declined, and they were no better than the evil path, which had become the target of scorn. No one knew where these killers came from. The few people who knew about the existence of the immortal diviners also unknowingly decreased until they completely disappeared. In the manner of the Blue Dragon Hall headquarters, Gu Nan sat in the guest room. Opposite him was a rare guest. "I thought that you would be busy hunting down the righteous path's experts and wouldn't have the time to come here," Gu Nan said with a relaxed expression as he looked at the person in front of him with a faint smile. This was the first time that Tang Xian had come to Gu Nan's lair. If she could, she really didn't want to come here. The people of the Samoyed heaven have all retreated. It's only a matter of time before they hunt down the natives. Tang Xian's expression was calm. For us, your attitude is the most important thing. Me? I don't have any attitude, Gu Nan said innocently. Whether you want resources or talents, it's none of my business. I'm just raising a disciple here and have the time to come here for a vacation. Tang Xian looked at him deeply and said in a low voice, I hope you can remember what you said today. About Mo Jiechi. I haven't seen Mo Jiechi in a long time, Gu Nan interrupted and spread his hands. Tang Xian gritted her teeth, feeling a little annoyed. Gu Nan was too cunning. Every step he took was right on the line. It made people feel annoyed if they didn't flare up, but if they did, they would feel that the gains weren't worth the losses. Whether it was killing Mo Jiechi or injuring Yijiu, they were all within the scope of the mission. The organization didn't suffer any substantial losses. Under such circumstances, the organization wouldn't put in the effort to kill a transcendent expert like him. She didn't know that digging out the benefits from the mission was something that players were best at. Since Gu Nan didn't want to admit it, Tang Xian didn't say anything else and immediately stood up to leave. But before she left, she suddenly smiled. Right, when we were killing the Righteous Paths experts, someone said that he knew you, so I brought him along. Treat it as a farewell gift. Huh! Gu Nan was stunned. After thinking for a long time, he really couldn't remember who he knew from the Righteous Path. And even if he knew him, why would Tang Xian be so kind as to specially bring him over? The next moment, Gu Nan couldn't help but laugh. A carriage slowly drove over. The curtain was lifted, revealing the figure of a woman. This woman's body was glowing with white light. Very few people could get close to her, but her expression was abnormally pale. It was obvious that it wasn't easy to support this white light. She was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Chapter 44. In the dark of the night, a long sword pierced through the man's abdomen. Why did you betray me? Bai Luolua's voice trembled, just like the hand holding the sword. What right do you have to fight for the position of Minister of the Six Ministries? The woman sneered and asked. She covered the wound on her abdomen, and her eyes revealed a look of resentment. Is it because you're the close friend of Hall Master? You're overestimating yourself. Bai Luolua's mind exploded, and she couldn't hear anything. Ever since she left the Blue Dragon Hall headquarters and came here to be an ordinary assassin, she had never relied on any external force to reach her current position. She even thought that no one would know about her relationship with Little Mississippi. She didn't expect that the person in front of her, who she regarded as her best friend, would see through her. As if reading Bai Luolua's mind, the man sneered again. Do you really think that we met by chance? Wasn't it? Don't be silly. How many of the higher-ups here don't know about your relationship with Hall Master? Deputy Minister Hua sent me to get close to you to keep an eye on you. The man's voice was like a sharp arrow, piercing through Bai Luolua's body. Bai Luoluo lowered her head, and tears seemed to come out of her eyes, but she held them back. She didn't know how long it had been since she was this sad. Ever since she died in her previous life and inexplicably crossed into this world, she told herself to be strong. She worked hard to learn martial arts, and was even willing to be a cold-blooded assassin, just to protect herself. But in the world of assassins, was there no trace of warmth? She looked up at the man in front of her. He was her only friend and companion in her career as an assassin, and even her emotional sustenance. But now there was only coldness in his eyes. Gradually, Bai Luolua's gaze began to become firm. Another sword flashed, and an arrow of blood suddenly came out of the man's neck. In this world, if you don't kill others, others will kill you. Bai Luoluo looked at the vast night sky and muttered to herself, Big Senior Sister, maybe you're right, evil event. Bai Luolua's blackening has been completed. Total sin points, 4. Gu Nan was sitting at home, and his sin points were falling from the sky. Do you have 4 o'clock? Not bad. Gu Nan nodded in satisfaction. Although this was a long-term event with a high difficulty, his participation rate was too low. It was good enough to get a reward of 4 points. The dungeon main quest has been completed. Main quest evaluation, C+, side quest development, B, map exploration, C, crime, B, overall evaluation, C+. Accumulated points, 1,000 points. Accumulated sin points, 30 points. What Gu Nan didn't expect was that the reward for the main mission of the immortal and demon world would also be sent to him at this time. Moreover, the value was very surprising. A total of 30 sin points, 1,000 points. Although Gu Nan already knew that the rewards for completing this huge main quest of the immortal and demon world would definitely not be small, so many rewards still made Gu Nan somewhat happy. Now he was sitting on 1,500 points, and his sin points had reached an astonishing 97 points. He was only 3 points away from opening the first skill bar. Sure enough, this kind of large-scale dungeon is the main source of sin points. Gu Nan thought about how he had worked himself to death for so long, and this time, he was only halfway through the mission. His heart suddenly felt unbalanced. Fortunately, it was all his own. For the first time, he even felt that joining some large-scale reincarnation organization also had certain benefits, such as being able to participate in this kind of large-scale mission. On a sunny morning, Gu Nan was already standing on the street of Star World's red carpet. Looking at the scene of spiritual cars coming and going in front of him, it was as if he had returned to his previous life. Gu Nan couldn't help but sigh. It's still more suitable to live in a technological civilization for retirement. Although the power of the immortal and demon world was attractive, there were still various inconveniences. While thinking, Gu Nan had already walked all the way to the entrance of care for one's family. Bai Luoluo's body was still preserved in care for one's family. Since the mission was completed, he could also notify care for one's family to wake her up. Please stop. A guard walked in front of Gu Nan, his expression cold. Sir, this is care for one's family. May I ask who you are looking for? Gu Xingzhu. The guard looked at Gu Nan suspiciously, but finally nodded and said, Please wait a moment, sir. The gazes of the people around him were also a little strange. Gu Nan's clothes were very ordinary, and there were no internal energy fluctuations around him. No matter how they looked at him, he didn't look like someone who could know Gu Xingzhu. The guard turned around and went inside to report. Next to him, a young girl who had entered the door at the same time as Gu Nan revealed a curious expression. Hey, what's your name? How do you know Xingzhu? Gu Nan turned his head slowly and saw that the young girl was wearing a white dress, which showed the unique characteristics of young girls. There was also a young man in a well-ironed suit standing next to her. When the young man heard Gu Xingzhu's name, he clearly shifted his gaze toward Gu Nan. I don't know her. I'm just asking her to lead the way. Gu Nan shook his head lightly in his heart. He didn't want to get into trouble, so he replied casually. Hearing this answer, the young man withdrew his gaze and no longer paid attention to Gu Nan. Oh! The young girl also noticed this, and she was a little disappointed. Then, she rolled her eyes and giggled. I heard that someone has been finding strange excuses to get close to Xingzhu recently. Don't tell me it's you? Gu Nan glanced at her. He was too lazy to speak anymore, so he simply kept his mouth shut. However, to those who were observant, the result would be the same regardless of how Gu Nan reacted. If you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. The young girl chuckled and patted the young man's shoulder. Brother, this person is trying to steal sister-in-law Xingzhu from you. Don't you have any reaction? The young man shook his head helplessly. Of course, he knew that this was his sister's spoiled temperament acting up again. If she didn't make fun of this person, it would be difficult for him to leave. The young girl didn't wait for him to speak. She directly ran to Gu Nan's side and raised her head. Hey! I'm asking you a question. Do you know who we are? She pointed at the young man. See? Young Master Shi Tianjing of the Eastern City Shi family. Are you afraid? As soon as he said that, Even the guards around him couldn't help but laugh. They felt that the young girl was obviously teasing Gu Nan, but Gu Nan had no choice but to accept it. This person looked like a country bumpkin coming to the city. It was his honor to be teased by the Shi family's young lady. Gu Nan continued to ignore the young girl's words. He didn't even turn his head. The guard who went to report earlier returned. He seemed to be in a hurry, and his attitude was even more respectful. Miss Xing Zhu invites you in. Okay. Gu Nan nodded. After being ignored several times, Miss Shi was really annoyed. She stopped Gu Nan and said, "Hey, wait! You still want to go in after ignoring me? Let me tell you, Xing Zhu and I grew up together. I don't care why you're looking for her, Bang! A strange sound rang out. It was Gu Nan who lifted his leg and kicked Miss Shi's abdomen. The kick sent her flying far away, and she fell on her butt. Chapter 45. There was a sudden silence in front of the door of Care for One's Family, and then Shi Tianjing was furious. He raised his hand and punched Gu Nan. Bastard! How dare you! Gu Nan didn't even turn his head. His silhouette swayed, and Shi Tianjing felt a huge force coming towards him, and his whole body was flung away. The world in Shi Tianjing's eyes was spinning. When he came back to his senses, Gu Nan's figure had disappeared, and he was surrounded by a group of people. Young Master Shi, are you okay? Several guards of Care for One's Family looked at him with concern. There was also a person who looked like a doctor next to him. Shi Tianjing suddenly stood up. He felt that he was not injured, but then he felt depressed and embarrassed. He was a warrior of innate level 5, but he was knocked down by someone who knew his identity and dared to attack him without any scruples. Shi Tianjing's eyes were a bit hazy, and he made up his mind to teach him a lesson. By the way, where is my sister? Miss Shi saw that you haven't woken up for a long time, so she said that she went to find Brother Long. Long Quan? Shi Tianjing's eyes were slightly cold. If he wanted to teach that country boy a lesson, he was afraid that Care for One's Family would protect him. By the way, to find old Su. When Gu Nan saw Gu Xingzhu, the latter had already heard about what happened outside the door and was speechless. This Gu Nan was really a scourge. He could cause trouble wherever he went. What are you doing here? Wake up, Bai Luoluo. It's time. Gu Xingzhu looked slightly solemn. Reincarnation was a forbidden thing. If it was exposed, even Care for One's Family would be in some trouble. So when Gu Nian insisted on bringing back Bai Luoluo's body, some people in the family still criticized him. In addition, Gu Nan spoke again and said indifferently, "I want to see Gu Nian." "I'm afraid that won't do." Gu Xingzhu frowned and shook her head. "What? She's not at Red Carp?" "Of course not." Gu Xingzhu gave him a strange look. "My sister has been busy with the martial arts competition recently. Even we haven't seen her for a few days, let alone you." Just, Before Gu Nan could finish his sentence, he suddenly paused. This was because the evil divine palace in his mind had suddenly said this. Crime event triggered. Serial event Red Carp Martial Arts Tournament. Serial incidents? Gu Nan couldn't help but be slightly startled. Chain events were quite rare even in the game. It was a combination of multiple events, and each step would result in a sin value. This kind of event was usually broadcast as a benefit, but he didn't expect to encounter one here. Martial arts meet? Gu Nan touched his chin and decided to adjust the content of the conversation with Gu Nian to focus on this so-called Red Carp martial arts meet. Gu Xingzhu thought he was talking to her, so she nodded and said, "Yes. The organizer of this Red Carp martial arts meet is our family's Chamber of Commerce." "Well, go and inform Gu Nian that I want to see her in 20 minutes. You." Gu Xingzhu suddenly showed a look of anger and said coldly, "Did you hear what I said? My sister is too busy to leave now. Just go and inform her." Gu Nan's expression was still calm, as if he was saying something trivial like, "I'll treat you to a meal." The corner of Gu Xingzhu's mouth twitched slightly. She took a few deep breaths and then sneered. Okay, that's what you said. She waved her hand to summon a person who looked like a butler, whispered a few words in his ear, and then went out. Obviously, she didn't want to see Gu Nan again, so she decided to hide from him. The butler was a middle-aged man with a mustache. With a standard smile on his face, he bowed and said, Mr. Gu Nan, I'm Wang Dong. You can tell me if you need anything. His smile was very standard, and there was a smile in his eyes, but he looked a little stiff. Wang Dong didn't care about what Miss Xingzhu said about, this person is very troublesome, because what he learned for half of his life was to deal with people. However, Gu Nan's first words made his face twitch. Gu Nan looked at him strangely. Old Wang. Why isn't your surname Gu? Wang Dong resisted the urge to roll his eyes and replied, Sir, my surname has been Wang since I was a child. I won't change my surname just because I'm employed by a family. I thought that for a family-like care for one's family, the butler would raise a child from a young age. Gu Nan recalled the plot in the novels from his previous life. Wang Dong had already regained his composure. Orphans will be raised by the Federation. In principle, private adoption is not allowed. The Federation? Gu Nan's eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. The astral realm was a semi-technological civilization, and with the existence of the Technological Federation, it still had some advantages. At the very least, the civilization system was more stable than a feudal civilization, and it was harder to overthrow it from within. Gu Nan was already at the 3rd level, and very soon, he would be at the 4th level, 5th level, and first transition. After the first transition, he would have to start building his own god kingdom, so he naturally had to think about it. Evil gods were not gods, but rather creatures that were in between gods and devils. However, they still had god kingdoms. The entire second transition was about building a god kingdom. Gu Nan fell silent, and Wang Dong was happy to do so. After a while, Gu Xingzhu walked over with an awkward expression. With a cold expression, she stood in front of Gu Nan for a long time, and finally said, Big sister said she will be here soon, fine. Gu Nan still looked as if it was a matter of course, which made Gu Xingzhu very angry. She wanted to ask Wang Dong to stay, but she heard a commotion outside the door. A servant hurried in and reported something in a low voice. After hearing this, Gu Xingzhu immediately revealed a playful smile and ordered, Let them in. The servant obeyed and left, but Gu Xingzhu turned to look at Gu Nan. Hey, your trouble is here. Shi Tianjing brought his gang of scoundrels here to cause trouble, and there are people from Su's family among them. There was still no expression on Gu Nan's face. It seems that you don't know what Su's family is. Gu Xingzhu began to explain. There are many big and small families in the Red Carp, but only the Su family and the Long family can be compared with my care for one's family. I know you are very powerful, but if you dare to hit people from Su's family, don't expect Big Sister to protect you. Gu Xingzhu sneered. It was not like she had never seen people like Gu Nan who looked down on everyone in the world just because they had a high cultivation base. Such a guy, naturally, would be taught a lesson by a big family. After all, this world was not a place where one person could play. As she spoke, Shi Tianjing had already come in with a group of people, but the leader was not him, but another young man. They came in front of Gu Nan, and Shi Tianjing just sneered without saying anything. A short man came up and said with a smile, Brother, you even dare to hit young Master Shi, you are quite bold. Today. Slap. As he was speaking, he suddenly felt a pain in the back of his head, as if he had been slapped. He immediately turned around in anger. Who hit? Brother Su. Chapter 46. In a spacious room, a dim light shone through the window. Gu Nan and Gu Nian were sitting across from each other. You being able to become a super at this time is beyond my expectations. Gu Nian looked calm. His face did not reveal anything, but he felt helpless. Even in the entire galaxy world, super elites were the backbone of the universe. In the ninth system, which had very few break world elites, super elites were the strongest power that could be seen in the human world. So, on the red carp, the best of the three families' descendants all competed to see who was the first to become a super elite. To level up, Han Sen had prepared and planned for many years. He had even reincarnated into a poor place to get what he wanted. This guy in front of him, Gu Nan could not help but stare at him. Gu Nan looked at him as if to say, "You are making a big deal out of nothing." Even with Gu Nianji's calmness, she had to take a deep breath to suppress the unfairness in her heart. "Why are you looking for me? I heard your family is holding a martial arts conference." "Yes." Talking about the martial arts conference, Gu Nian's face looked tired. "I have been busy with this. Are you interested in joining?" "Oh, I forgot. You already?" "Yes." Gu Nan nodded with interest. He did not realize he was a super elite. Gu Nian's face looked gloomy. The martial arts conference is divided into two groups, prenatal and postnatal. "I can pretend to be prenatal," Gu Nan answered without hesitation. Although Gu Nian could tell he had broken through, that was because Gu Nian's skill was special. Plus, Gu Nan did not try to hide it. If it was necessary, Gu Nan could even buy a piece of concealment equipment. For the sake of the serial case, it was acceptable to invest some points into it. Gu Nian shook his head. "If you join, this martial arts conference will be pointless. How about I arrange for you to be a judge?" "Judge?" "That's right. The martial arts tournament will begin in 20 days, enough time for you to build momentum." Gu Nian revealed a light smile. "Just do me a favor. If care for one's family produces another transcendent, its position will be completely stabilized." Gu Nan rubbed his chin, wondering if this deal was worth it. He obtained the official qualification to participate in the martial arts tournament and the convenience provided by care for one's family, but the price was to be completely roped in by care for one's family. It didn't seem to be a problem. Anyway, he could regret it at any time. Gu Nan was very optimistic. Eldest senior sister. Woo woo woo. Ever since Bai Luoluo saw Gu Nian, she threw herself into her arms and began to cry bitterly. "You're so weak. Looks like you still need some treatment." Magnetic Storm Infantryman, Gu Yongxin said. Bai Luoluo's beautiful face immediately paled. Although she had successfully turned evil in the immortal and demon world, it didn't mean that she liked that kind of life. After all, she wasn't Yen Xiaoxiao. The human heart had always been a very complicated thing. As someone who grew up in a city like the Langyu world, Bai Luoluo didn't like fighting and killing. If it was in the immortal and demon world, it would be fine. Now that she had returned to the star world, she would naturally adjust slowly. Of course, it was impossible for her to return to her previous pure and innocent state. Bai Luoluo looked at Gu Nan with a somewhat complicated gaze. She already knew that she didn't transmigrate, but was forcefully reincarnated by Gu Nan. Thinking back to the familiar figure from that day, the answer was already obvious. So he was the little Mrs. Teacher, rest well. There's no need to rush your cultivation. Just let nature take its course. Gu Nian lightly patted the back of her head and said softly. Compared to Gu Nan, Bai Luoluo was her greatest karma. Now that the latter could break free from the influence of the clear heart Tao, it couldn't be better. After seeing Bai Luoluo, Gu Nan had nothing else to do. Just as he was about to return to continue his Instance Dungeon mission, he was stopped by Gu Nian. "You want to reincarnate again?" She pulled Gu Nan aside and said with a serious expression, "I don't know what you can gain from reincarnation, but reincarnation is definitely not a shortcut." Gu Nan frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "The stronger the soul, the greater the pressure on the plane when reincarnating. So the plane itself will produce a repulsive force. If the frequency of reincarnation is too high or the duration of reincarnation is too long, it will cause damage to the soul. At this point, Gu Nian stared at Gu Nan and said in a low voice, "If you had been to the reincarnation plane after advancing to the transcendent level, you should have noticed it." Gu Nan carefully thought about it, and it seemed to be as Gu Nian said. After staying in the immortal demon world for a month, he often felt a repulsive force from the world. At first, he thought it was because of his third-order body, but now that he thought about it, it was most likely because of reincarnation. This fact made him a little annoyed. Reincarnation was the main source of his sin point. If there were restrictions, it would greatly slow down his advancement. "I need to wait for a period of time before I can reincarnate again?" he asked. "That's right." Gu Nian nodded lightly. "During this period of time, you can come here first. To help you build momentum, you need a suitable identity." "What identity?" "My younger brother." That afternoon, even though Long Quan, the Shi siblings, and even Su Sun did not spread the news, it still spread at an astonishing speed. In a short 2 days, the entire capital district's upper echelons knew that Long Quan had suffered a great loss in care for one's family, and even had one of his legs broken. And the cause of all this was because his most beloved Shi Miao had provoked someone she shouldn't have. Exactly how many people shouldn't have provoked that one shouldn't have provoked? Some people thought that the person who was provoked was Gu Nian himself, and that no one else had the ability to do anything to Long Quan. Others thought that it was some hidden power in care for one's family that had made the move, and that it was Gu Nian who had taught an outsider a lesson when he wasn't around. Until one time, Gu Nian personally declared in public, "The one who made the move was my younger brother Gu Nan. He had just become a transcendent half a month ago." It was earth-shattering. An uproar. Who was this Gu Nan? Gu Nan actually had a second person who had become a transcendent? The first thing that was clearly investigated was Gu Nan's identity. He came from a remote branch of care for one's family. His parents had both died, and he was extremely talented. He was discovered by Gu Nian a long time ago, and was treated as a private force, hiding and immersing himself in cultivation until he became a transcendent. This information was naturally prepared by Gu Nian in advance. Basically, there was no evidence, and it was not convincing at all. But it also made it impossible for people to find any loopholes. There were loopholes everywhere, and they couldn't do anything about it. In any case, the younger generation of care for one's family had a second transcendent. This was an indisputable fact. The world is going to change. This thought emerged in many people's minds. Even if Gu Nian had become a transcendent, some people still stood firm, thinking that she was just a step ahead. Su Fian was much younger than Gu Nian, and the Long family even had 2 transcendent seeds. But when care for one's family had a second transcendent, all this seemed to have become a joke.